Beyond these stone walls, the whole world was erupting because the ultimate evil was finally dead. Massive crowds had gathered to throw flowers at a golden boy who supposedly saved the day. There wouldn't be any more monster raids, and no more innocent lives would be cut short. Isgard was finally tasting peace after centuries of slaughter, while two kids raced down an alley. The boy yelled at his sister to move faster, or they'd miss the hero's victory parade. This was their one shot at seeing a legend, but then the boy walked into a shadow. A figure in a midnight cloak brushed past him, radiating a chill that froze his very blood. His sister caught up, staring in confusion at her paralyzed brother and the strange, robed man walking away. She couldn't understand why anyone would head away from the party, while her brother prayed for invisibility. He forced her to look away, realizing the man was a practitioner of the forbidden dark arts. They were a vile breed of mages who tapped into the void, though the girl didn't understand. Her brother explained that wearing that black robe meant you were carrying a permanent, walking curse. I ignored them, clutching a stained white sack as I hiked toward the cathedral for my meeting. The saint stood on the balcony, watching her world finally settle into a quiet, peaceful rhythm. I didn't bother waiting for a welcome. I just stood in the doorway, a shadow in her light. Her golden hair screamed of holy power, and her white dress was a symbol of pure divinity. By comparison, my tattered black clothes and cold stare felt like an insult to everything holy. If she was the morning sun, I was the encroaching midnight. My name is Manold. I dumped the contents of the sack the Demon King's severed head, revealing who the real hero was. While some fraud in shiny armor took the applause, I was the one doing the actual killing. She started her rehearsed speech of gratitude, but I cut her off because I only wanted one thing. I'd finished the job they forced on me, and now I wanted her to settle the bill. Her expression soured, but she promised the church would keep its word and fulfill our secret pact. She hesitated, asking if she should address me by my title or by my real name. She called me Kim Jun, the name I had before this world dragged me into its mess. Beneath the goddess's statue, she tried to pull me into a heartfelt, emotional talk about my destiny. She apologized for the burden I'd carried, claiming it wasn't out of spite that she chose me. She said she was forever in my debt, but I told her I hated her guts enough to die. Even after that, she promised to use her influence to fix the reputation of all dark mages. She begged me to stay and help build the future instead of running back home. I didn't care. I told her I'd been used by this world for far too long already. I just wanted to leave in one piece, but she sighed and tried to bribe me again. She promised me wealth and status to make up for all the years I'd been treated like dirt. I told her to quit the acting. I was tired of her playing the merciful saint for me. She insisted she was being sincere, but I told her there was nothing in this world I wanted. Her eyes went wide. As a chosen one, she thought she could offer me the whole world. She asked what could be so valuable that she couldn't give it, so I reminded her I was kidnapped. I was treated like a tool. And now she wanted me to stay and keep being their janitor. What could this backward magical dump possibly offer me in exchange for my life? She argued that if I left, their precious peace would crumble, so she'd grant me any single wish. So I asked for my first wish, some spicy Korean fried chicken, but the saint just stared blankly. I asked for a side of kimchi, and again, she had absolutely no clue what I meant. I told her the food here was garbage and I was sick of eating those dry survival crackers. Why would I stay in a world where I can't even get a decent meal for dinner? Since she couldn't even manage dinner, I asked for a gaming PC and high-speed internet. Obviously, she was clueless. Finally, the saint's knuckles turn white as she realizes she can no longer chain me to this realm. I never belonged here. Bowing her head in defeat, she prepares to initiate the transition ritual immediately. She leads me to the chamber where my nightmare began, and I smile knowing I'll never see it again. Center of the circle. Now, she commands, her voice trembling as the ancient machinery hums for my departure. Violently, luminous geometric patterns ignite beneath my boots, swirling like a vortex of liquid fire. First, I must strip away the saint's blessing, she whispers, her eyes locked onto mine. I peel back my leather glove, exposing the glowing brand etched deep into the flesh of my palm. They call it protection. In reality, it is a magical leash designed to keep a summoned slave in line. Burning it off is a relief. She raises her palms, and holy light dissolves the brand into nothingness. She looks baffled. To her, I am a fool for discarding the godlike sorcery I mastered over the years. She cannot fathom why I would walk away from the mountains of gold and fame waiting for me here. I have had enough of this fantasy garbage. Mind your own business and finish the spell, I snap. Aren't you scared? I ask. Without that leash, I could slaughter you before the ritual even ends. She stares back, unblinking. I know I am the source of every ounce of hatred in your soul. If my death offers you peace, take it. The seal is gone. Kill me if you must. If not, she continues coldly, then let us proceed to the second phase of your erasure. Now comes the part where they strip my magic. She retreats, preparing the spell to make me human again. But this is where her little plan fails, and my dark design takes over. Faster than she can blink, I lash out with coils of shadow, hoisting her screaming into the air. "The gate will kill you if you keep that power," she shrieks. "This is absolute madness." I bled for this power. There is zero chance I am returning to Earth as a helpless nobody. I slam her onto the stone floor and ignite the dimensional rift using my own blackened mana. She gasps for air, terrified that my unholy energy will cause the entire portal to implode and kill me. Her panic is wasted. I am already standing before a stable, shimmering tier in reality, humming with perfection. Regardless, she screams one last warning about the fatal risks of jumping dimensions. As if I haven't prepared for this. I practiced this magic thousands of times. I never understood why you idiots obsessed over light versus dark anyway. Once you reach the summit, you realize all power flows from the same source. I reach into my coat. "Actually, I have a parting gift for you before I vanish forever." "What is it?" I just give her a parting insult and step into the portal, savoring the thought of leaving this hellhole. "Stop! It's collapsing!" she bellows, her voice drowned out by the roar of the unstable gateway. Too late. The entire chamber erupts in a violent, blinding shockwave of violet cosmic radiation. The rift implodes, vanishing instantly. The saint collapses, striking the cold floor in a fit of silent rage. She weeps, stung by my hatred. She truly believes she was just a faithful servant of her duty. She never intended to be a monster or enjoy the hardships she forced me to endure. None of it matters now. I am gone, reappearing in a dusty, forgotten apartment building back on Earth. Violet sparks dance in the air as I materialize on the grimy, familiar carpet. Home. I made it. Despite my bravado, that trip through the void felt like a near-death experience. The nightmare is over. I am standing in the exact same messy bedroom where I vanished years ago. My phone is sitting on the nightstand, still charging. I grab it, craving the familiar weight of plastic. I miss this sensation more than words can say. My favorite game is still there on the screen. As the game loads, a manic laugh escapes my throat. I actually won. I beat the system, but my celebration is cut short. No Wi-Fi, no signal. Outside, a squad of soldiers is hugging the walls like they are in a war zone. "Are we locked on that freak's position?" the CO barks, his voice tight with dread. Our scout gives a sharp nod, confirming we're dead on the coordinates from the radio. I mutter to the corporal, asking why mere grunts are being fed to this nightmare. "Ask Brass," he snaps. "He's clueless. It's do or die now. We have to fight." We suck in one last breath, bracing our nerves for the impending slaughter. On the signal, we storm the corner, guns leveled, but the target is totally surreal. I'm just stomping along, fuming because my signal is dead and everything's closed at noon. The squad freezes, baffled to see a civilian in the red zone, screaming for me. I'm equally stunned, staring down a dozen rifles in the middle of a city street. I figure it's a drill. "Sorry for crashing the party, guys," I call out, waving. Suddenly, they go pale, pointing behind me and shrieking for me to haul ass. I turn around slowly, wondering what could possibly have these professional killers so rattled. It's a nightmare. A massive, mutant wolf is mid-lunge, ready to shred my throat. But the beast isn't actually the thing that's making my jaw drop. I'm shocked they're scared of this runt. I've gutted demons 10 times larger for years. I squeeze my fist to call the void, but my dark mana simply won't spark. The power is just gone. My demonic energy has completely evaporated. Whatever. I just grab the mangy mutt and slam its skull into the hard asphalt. The squad stares, paralyzed, as the beast's fangs shatter like cheap glass against the ground. Being attacked still has me seeing red, so I pop its head like a grape. Even without magic, I'm not about to let some flea-bitten stray take me down. Years of brutal, physical conditioning in the Dark Legion didn't just vanish with my mana. I know these things, but why the hell are they invading my home turf? I have questions, but these grunts are so shaken they can barely find their voices. After a tense talk, they usher me into an armored Humvee to escort me out. The corporal keeps lecturing me about how I almost became lunch in this infested sector. Normally, I'd be arrested, but their CO wants zero drama and ordered my release. He keeps eyeing me, wondering how anyone could be this oblivious to the global collapse. I just lie about living abroad. But honestly, this isn't the soul I remember. The world started falling apart when I was 7, when the first dungeons tore open. Monsters bled into reality. I remember the army fighting them off, just like today. Then the awakened appeared people who suddenly had the juice to strike back. These supers became the elite hunter corps, wiping out threats before they could blink. That was all before that damn saint plucked me from this world. Korea was actually safe back then, but now it looks like the stakes have shifted. I'm sweating now. With all this chaos, are the game servers actually offline for good? If the game is dead, what was the point of coming back? Corporal's getting suspicious. He can't fathom how I'm this clueless, even if I was living in the sticks. But he's seen my hands. He isn't brave enough to ask the questions he wants. That display of raw, physical dominance is enough to keep him from prying. Hey, I say, leaning forward. Did the people get out? You know, the tech guys? Are the game devs okay? Can I still find work? Is the city still standing? Are the server farms intact? I'm obsessing, but I need to know if my game survived. The corporal exhales slowly, finally ready to give me the full bloody history. It started 2 years ago, he mutters, when the dungeons began to evolve. One day, reality cracked wide open. Colossal, nightmarish creatures poured from these rifts, turning our world into a living graveyard that no one saw coming. Consequently, the front lines crumbled, forcing the military to wall off entire cities and leave civilians to rot behind barricades. They're running out of bodies to throw at the problem, a desperate reality that makes my skin crawl. But honestly, I couldn't care less about their collapsing world. My only burning question is whether the servers for Dungeon Power Fighter are still online or if my life is truly over. The sergeant barks a question about my age. I tell him I'm likely 21 this year. He tells me to sign my life away before my youth evaporates into nothingness. I'm just standing there, completely baffled. Service used to be 3 years for grunts. Why on earth would I flush 5 years of my prime down the drain? But things have gone south fast, so now every single soul serves 5 years minimum, no exceptions for anyone anymore. At 21, my draft notice is probably already in the mail. What a massive, soul-crushing disappointment. I clawed my way back home to live life on easy mode and game, not to rot in some muddy trench for 5 years. The fury is boiling over. I haven't even had the chance to log into a single server yet. Then my phone vibrates with a signal. Report to Division X tomorrow for mandatory enlistment. The universe has a sick sense of humor. You couldn't write a more perfectly timed disaster if you tried. I tried to laugh it off as some elaborate prank, but the look on the corporal's face told me this was deadly serious. It's a total shock. Since when does the government skip the medical exam and just snatch you off the street? And how is a 24-hour warning even legal in a civilized society? He just says they're desperate for meat for the grinder. As for the notice, he claims I'm just late to the party. He suggests I head to the nearest internet cafe to verify my grim fate on their official portal. The mention of a PC cafe jolts me awake. After my parents disappeared, those neon-lit rooms were my only sanctuary. I was dragged into the hellscape of Isgard in the 12th grade, leaving behind a life with 0 friends. Now, after surviving literal demons, I've finally found my way back to the only paradise I ever knew. A dark room where the game servers are still humming, and I can finally lose myself in the digital world. I lose track of time in that haven, inhaling every piece of greasy fast food I dreamt about while starving in another dimension. The waitress looks horrified by my appetite, but as the hunger fades, the crushing weight of this new world finally sets in. Every headline confirms the corporal's nightmare. The world is ending, and I'm expected to report for duty by dawn. Just like the text warned, my time is officially up tomorrow morning. If I still wielded the godlike powers I possessed in that other realm, I could wipe these dungeons off the map single-handedly, but my demonic essence has been completely drained from my veins. Don't get it twisted, though I'm far from being a victim. I know I can still dominate these monsters. I stand up in that crowded cafe and roar my defiance for everyone to hear. If I have to burn the world down to save my favorite games, then I'll be the one to end this nightmare myself. At sunrise, I march into the National Defense Center, following the digital shackles of my enlistment orders. I'm stunned by the sheer ocean of people who've been herded here for the exact same grim purpose. People are sobbing into their families' arms, but I find their pathetic, tear-streaked faces almost entertaining to watch. Suddenly, a cold voice cuts through the chaos, ordering every new recruit to the auditorium for immediate processing. The army might be a different beast now, but I doubt it'll be half as brutal as the pits of Isgard. Inside, the commanders are screaming blue murder, demanding instant obedience from a crowd that's already broken. They're spitting insults and creating an atmosphere of pure misery, leaving the terrified recruits shaking in their boots. Honestly, their threats are child's play compared to the sadistic masters I survived in that other world. By my standards, these terrifying instructors are acting like absolute saints. Then, the big man himself, the battalion commander, steps up to the mic and demands total silence. He bypasses the usual speech and asks if any of us are brave or stupid enough to volunteer for the elite hunter corps. He promises better pay and special treatment for the front line, but the room stays dead silent. No one wants to die today. The commander told the fresh meat this was all just paperwork for now. No reason to sweat, but he missed a spot. One guy's hand was already up. Naturally, it was me. The boss barked for the volunteer to front and center. Obeying that first order, I kicked off so hard the concrete floor just gave way. I soared way past the crowd, sticking a perfect landing on the stage. He just stared. I introduced myself as Recruit Kim In-jun and told him I wanted in the Hunter Corps. Now, look at the frozen, hellish wastes of northern Isgard. It is a jagged, sunless tomb where the air is thick with choking, dead dust. Hardly a soul lives here. That is why they call it the Canyon of the Lost. Deep inside a pitch-black cave, a single point of light fought the shadows. I muttered that this dark mage gig is just one disaster after another. I was right. I was dead certain that being a dark mage was the worst hand I could have been dealt. I sat atop a massive spider's skull, letting its dead weight serve as my throne. Flashy skills are worthless if you run out of demonic fuel. Then, you're just done. It was simple. We rely on demonic energy like it's our own twisted version of mana. It doesn't just grow back on its own like the stuff regular wizards use. I thought of those white wizards who claim mana is just floating in the breeze. Just soak it up, they say. But guys like me don't get that kind of luxury. I only get a refill by butchering monsters and drinking their dark essence. I realized early on that burning power just to find more power was a losing game. Being a dark mage means no friends, no teams. I'm a solo act until the end. If my tank hits empty inside a dungeon, I'm basically a walking corpse. So why the hell was I grinning? Because I had a theory I needed to test. How does a dark mage stay topped off and keep it that way? I asked the fire. There was no reply. Everyone in earshot was already dead and cold. Relax. They weren't even people. 50 massive venomous spiders lay dead around me. I was sitting on one. They'd exploded into green sludge, their carapaces riddled with gaping holes. Suddenly, a massive crack echoed as something heavy pierced the floor behind me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, Arachnist, the boss of this hellhole. She was a titan, 5 times larger than her brood. Her glowing red eyes and razor-sharp pincers locked on as she lunged at me. I tried to talk, but she was just a mindless beast with zero self-restraint. She screamed at the sight of her dead young, a sound that didn't rattle me at all. I'm far too seasoned as a dark mage to let a giant bug be the end of my story. In one blur of motion, I sliced through her hide and took her head. Boss down. So, what is the secret to keeping a dark mage's power at its peak? According to me, you just have to crush monsters with maxed out power levels. 645 days before Earth, I took down a whole hive by myself. Flash forward to the present. I'm sipping coffee. Is your name Kim Jun? A voice asks. I just nodded. The uniformed officer told me to wait for the Hunter Corps transport. I thanked him, surprised that the big boss himself had brewed this for me. He sat down, looking me over. You're pretty fired up, he noted. Why join the Hunters? Most gifted people are running back to the regular army. So, what's your angle? Why the Hunter Corps specifically? The old man's digging for answers, but I keep it short. I've got work to do in the pits. Silence hung heavy until he suddenly roared, thinking my dead serious answer was just a punchline. You're a riot, he wheezed. I'll even waive the bill for that auditorium floor you wrecked. I didn't crack a smile. Why was this old fool laughing at my absolute truth? In this country, the military owns the abyss. You don't just walk into a dungeon. The Corps is elite. Only raw, lethal talent determines your rank and your future. I needed that badge. It was my only ticket back into the darkness. If I could solo the depths, I could finally reclaim the strength I'd lost. It was a desperate man's pipe dream. A gamble against a very rigged reality. I imagined hitting 10 stars, clearing every gate within 5 years, and winning big. After that victory lap, I'd retire as a rich, untouchable icon. A perfect speedrun for a broken life. While I was busy building castles in the air, reality walked through the door. Sergeant Lee Yuno marched in, sharp and eager, immediately fixating on my presence. Got the spark? He barked. Prove it. Pull up your status window right now. He pressed for my numbers, his frantic energy grinding against my frayed nerves. Is everyone in this unit this unbearable? I wondered, trying to keep my cool. I summoned the interface. It was familiar tech, even back in Isgard. Simple. Just raw data, numerical values that defined exactly what a man was worth. Status, I commanded. But then the screen flickered, and my blood ran cold. Lee kept pestering me for a readout, but the display was a total void. It just blinked. Error. Lee's jaw dropped. He'd never seen the system fail. Meanwhile, across town at the training center, a high-stakes meeting was quietly unfolding. 10 years, the commander mused. A whole decade since our paths last crossed. Sit down, Hunter Son Yunio. She remained standing, her gaze cutting through him. I'm no hunter yet, sir, she corrected. Just another recruit in basic boots. Why am I here? And please, don't give me favors because of my father's name. The commander waved off her concerns with a dismissive, knowing grunt. This isn't about the general, he countered, leaning forward with a sharp intensity. No favors here. Getting into the Corps is a meat grinder for every soul. She frowned, still searching for the real reason behind this sudden private summons. You're the top prospect, he smirked. Why wouldn't the training boss notice the star rookie? He just wanted to pep talk his prize pony before the real hell started. Thanks for choosing the front lines over a desk. We need your killer instincts. We're always bleeding talent, he admitted, his voice dropping to a somber tone. Soldiers like you keep us breathing. I'm grateful. As a patriot and a commander. She flushed, offering stiff thanks. Then, something outside caught the commander's eye. A transport truck rumbled into the lot, sparking a thought of that strange kid. You've got a real joker joining your squad, he said. Let's go meet him. We arrived, and the sheer scale of the headquarters nearly stopped my heart. It was a towering glass monolith, reaching toward the sky with arrogant grace. It gleamed like a diamond. I wondered how many billions they'd bled from taxpayers. This place was serious business. I just hoped they had a gaming lounge inside. Don't get cozy, Lee hissed. That error code might still get you booted. Sergeant Lee makes it clear that because I'm an outlier, he'll be handling my evaluation personally. It's obvious the guy has a grudge. He admitted he'd rather ship me to the MPs than train me. He just keeps on ranting. Once these tests prove you're a total fraud, you better be ready for an immediate military police escort. I can practically smell the envy coming off Lee, which honestly makes me wonder what his deal is. The guy is being incredibly petty. I ask about the task, and he points toward a massive, glowing crimson crystal. This red stone is a nasty byproduct of the dungeon's dense, jagged, and supposedly indestructible. It's a mountain of dead weight that no ordinary recruit could ever hope to budge. Luckily, I'm not your average grunt. Lee's challenge is simple. Move that rock 1 inch or fail. A smirk creeps across my face. That's it? I ask. This is almost too easy. Lee's expression shifts instantly. He realizes I'm not nearly as clueless as I look. There is no other way to verify a candidate's status window manually. The Corps is always full of fakes trying to bluff their way in, and that system error is suspicious. Even after seeing me leap 5 meters onto the stage, he's convinced I'm just a talented liar. Up on the balcony overlooking the hall, the commander brings Hunter's son to watch my evaluation. Word is, this kid pulled off some freakish physical stunts back at the initial training camp. Yet for some reason, his system readout is nothing but a wall of glitches. The veteran officer admits he's never seen a case like this and has high hopes for my potential. I walk up to the red stone and rest my palm against its cold surface. I recognize this heavy trash from the Iscard pits. A pebble this size won't slow me down. I lean in, winding up a strike heavy enough to send this boulder flying. For all I know, there might be some dark energy hidden inside to make things interesting. Lee and Son are staring intently, probably trying to predict what I'm about to do. I throw a swift punch, and the stone doesn't just slide, it explodes. Dust clears to reveal a massive crater. All 3 spectators are frozen in place, their mouths hanging open in total disbelief. Turns out there was no dark magic inside. I had simply obliterated the unbreakable rock with raw force. Honestly, my own strength caught me off guard. I really am a total freak of nature. Lee just stood there, his mind completely short-circuiting as he witnessed my terrifying power. Day 1 of training kicks off, and the other recruits are already drowning in sweat on the stairs. Hayek's mind is spinning from pure exhaustion. He can tell something is very wrong here. I knew the Hunter Corps wouldn't be a walk in the park, but this is insane. He grits his teeth, fighting muscle failure while tackling the legendary 6,000-step climb. Since we're shipping out to real battles immediately, it's 4 weeks of absolute, non-stop carnage. They strap heavy sandbags to us on day 1 and force us up those 6,000 stairs. The sergeant breathes down our necks, mocking our times just like the predictable drill instructor he is. That's Devil Instructor Lee for you. Hayek realized that even after this brutal, crude grind, you barely bump your stats before they toss your green ass right into the meat grinder. He figured he just had to suck it up because he was a new recruit. That was the plan until he saw me. Are we the problem? He wondered. Meanwhile, I'm having a blast. I feel light on my feet and I'm cruising through the drills. With my full dark power, I'd be flying. This is preschool compared to the nightmare pits I've survived. Forget those Iscard rags. This crisp military uniform is a massive upgrade for my look. I'm actually digging the vibe here, especially the top-tier fuel they serve in the mess hall. The schedule is a total grind. 6 in the morning wake-up calls, then breakfast by 8:30. We train from sunrise all the way until the dinner bell rings at dusk. Midnight gaming was my fix. I stayed consistent. I owned my nights. Cash, pixels, my ultimate dream. I blurred past, stunning them. Lee heard my thunderous ascent. Who am I? Most crawl? Finished? Lee stared. I shrugged. I cornered Sarge about promises. The 30-minute pass, did I win? Lee shoved the pass over. The sergeant checked the clock. 21-minute record. Pass earned. Instincts matter more than stats. Lee sensed my inner monster. The spotlight fixed on me. Recruits feared this permanent hell. In Hayek cheered 1 stat point. Everyone checked their status windows. 1 point? I scoffed. Seriously? Iscard beatings gave 10 daily. That pass. What's your move? In Hayek prodded. I stayed silent. Envy boiled. Rumors began spreading. Sarge has never issued one. Shock. Effortless climbing. Gym freak? Acceptance, this feeling was new, treated humanely, not like Mage. In Iscard, my voice sinned. No eye contact. Connection instead. Lounge is open. You in? Others bailed. I exploded energy. Gaming lounge! I'm already gone! Total contentment. My gaming rig. 9 p.m., my countdown began. 2 hours sleep, pure luxury. Gaming until exhaustion. Pure bliss. They judged my retro game. The brutal grind continued tomorrow. Lee drove them through exhaustion. Maintain pace, don't break. 40 kilometers or starve. Gliding. Maxed 10 characters yesterday. Sweating? This is just walking. Gaming for weeks? You serious? You some kind of freak? None just smirks back. The worst kind. Brought water for my favorite brothers. Guess nobody's thirsty, he says, dumping it in the dirt. They swarm the puddle like starving birds, desperate for every single drop. Look at these little chicks, Mune mutters just as Sergeant Lee stomps into view. Listen up, he roars. The lieutenant is disgusted by your weakness. He starts shredding us for being soft. 1 week left and half of you losers can't even hit the bare minimum. You're the worst squad yet. Meanwhile, Mune wonders why this guy refers to himself in the third person. He gets this deathly serious look, like he's about to drop a bomb on our heads. Once you're deployed, 50% of you will be body bags in 30 days. Think you can handle the final gauntlet with that pathetic attitude? It's called the dungeon adaptation, the last hurdle before you're officially part of the Hunter Corps. Usually, when you clear the monsters, the dungeon just vanishes into thin air. But sometimes a glitch happens and the place stays, warping into a shifting training ground. The layout cycles constantly, like a living, breathing, randomly generated nightmare. It's the perfect meat grinder to see how rookies handle every kind of hell. They call it the adaptation. And it's famous for breaking new recruits before they even start. They're already shaking in their boots, exactly like the lieutenant wanted. He loves keeping the tension high. It's how he stays in control. He treats us like high-strung racehorses that need a bit of the whip. Lash 'em, then feed 'em. He dangles a tiny reward like we're starving dogs. He shouts that the top performer gets a 3-day, 2-night leave pass. He waits for the cheers, expecting us to lose our minds with joy, but we're blank-faced. He repeats it, louder, like we didn't hear him. 3 days of freedom, he screams, trying to sell us on the dream. No matter the hype, nobody cares about a pass when their lives are on the line. Except us. For me and my guys, 72 hours of peace sounds like heaven. Then the hellish training begins. We stand before a gate so massive it dwarfs us all. Half the guys are still staring at their boots, wondering why they're here. Suddenly, a truck slams on the brakes right in front of us, choking everyone with dust. Through the grit, we see what it brought. 2 dark questions haunt us. What were those glowing eyes in the cage? And what slaughter have they planned? Those eyes track us through the bars with growls that freeze your soul. I squint as my vision clears, looking into the dark crate. We see fangs and matted fur. Hounds. But not the normal kind. These are bloodthirsty killers, pure and terrifying. Panic hits. 2 guys hide behind Mune while another just hits the dirt. But Mune isn't scared. He actually finds the whole thing kind of funny. To him, they're just puppies. The lieutenant screams, asking if we're terrified yet. He tells us these are our dance partners for the shifting maze. That sends the panic into overdrive. He orders us into 4-man teams. Kill 1 monster and find your way out to prove you're worth something to the Corps. He shouts a quick pep talk about fighting through the pain, and they believe him. Then he tells us to suit up for some high-tech armor. An instructor tells us to line up for our official Mark II safety suits. I'm strapped into a silver steel chassis that feels more like a cage than armor. Its sole purpose is keeping my vitals stable inside this heavy metal coffin. The whole thing is clunky, rigid, and weighs a literal ton. The other guys are complaining, wishing for gear that isn't complete garbage. I hate it. This suit is filthy, soaked in the sweat of 1,000 dead recruits. Hard to believe they spent 50 million won to produce this heavy junk. I asked the lieutenant for permission to ditch the suit once I gut these hounds. He just barks at us for being arrogant, not even bothering to see who spoke. Once he realizes it's me, his ego softens and he just nods. Then he reminds me this is a team drill. I have to keep these losers alive. I've always known my squad mates couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. So, I decide to give them a quick crash course in monster slaying. Listen, I say. When they leap, grab their legs and snap their spines. And if the bastards are still breathing after that, fold them backwards and rip them in half. I can't help but grin. They just stare back, looking completely exhausted by my supposed ego. The lieutenant bellows for the release, and the instructor throws the cage open. The hounds explode out, galloping with a savage speed these kids have never seen. Growling and foaming, their glowing white eyes are absolutely blinding. They bolt straight through the massive dungeon doors and vanish into the dark. My team is baffled, wondering why the beasts didn't just tear us apart. I explain the truth. They're just homesick captives running back to their dens. They get it, but now they're wondering how I know so much about monster biology. I wish I could tell them about the hell I faced in Iskard. I was a dark mage back then, but that's a secret I have to keep buried. The lieutenant cuts us off, screaming about disrespect on these holy grounds. He's annoyed, so he decides we're the lucky ones going in first. Just like that, my squad is the designated point team for this nightmare. The sergeant waves his red light wand, signaling us to enter the abyss. 4 of us march in, 1 ready, 2 terrified, and me just wanting to start. I just want this over so I can peel off this toxic, heavy chest plate. The only thing we have in common is that we all have oversized ears. The lieutenant clicks his radio, calling the internal monitors. There's a backup crew hiding inside just in case we get slaughtered. An observer radios back from the crystal walls we're officially on camera. And of course, the devil instructor is the one watching our every move. He spots me and freezes, clearly shaken by my sudden growth in power. My scores have been perfect throughout the last 4 weeks of training, but being a star in practice doesn't mean you'll survive a real dungeon. I know that's the only question burning in the instructor's mind. Hungry eyes watch us from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to kill. The wolves are ready to pounce, but I can already hear them breathing. I could honestly end them all with a few simple finger flicks. But if I do all the work, these guys won't get any experience points. This is a group effort, even if I have to carry them. Heads up, I growled, sensing the pack closing in. Terror hit them first, quickly followed by the raw sound of screaming. I barked to trust the gear, but they were statues. I stepped out first. A beast lunged. I pivoted and drove a fist through its skull instantly. Then, a wet snap his teeth found a recruit's arm in the dark. The hound locked eyes with me while the kid begged for a savior. I charged, sending that creature flying into a wall with 1 lethal kick. I hauled him up, realizing we were sinking into a total nightmare here. Fight or die! I spat. If they smell your fear, you're just dog food. They want easy prey. We have the numbers. Use them to crush them. In the real world, I roared, you would all be corpses by now. I drove them forward, forcing all 3 to strike as one single weapon. From the shadows, the instructors watched the slaughter in a stunned, heavy silence. My lethal poise left those hardened veterans looking completely baffled and wide-eyed. The squad finally swarmed the last beast, tearing it down like a tide. They whispered conspiracies. Was I some secret agent or a high-level instructor plant? When the tally came in, my name sat at the absolute top spot. I didn't just show strength, I showed them how to lead through hell. I dragged those cowards through the fire until they finally stood up tall. The rest of the squad barely cleared the bar with average passing marks. They cheered, gasping for air as if they had cheated death itself this time. The pros emerged. Good work. Now, just follow us back to the exit. I pressed them about my score and that promised leave. I wanted out. You guys talk tough, I joked, but you are just worried mothers, aren't you? Then, the floor buckled. A violent, bone-deep tremor rattled the entire dungeon. Just the dungeon shifting its skin, I said, trying to mask my doubt. But something felt horribly wrong. Panic flared as the exit began to shrink, vanishing into the solid stone. They hammered their radios, screaming for the lieutenant to answer their call. Nothing but static. The shift was too fast. Our lifeline was officially severed. This was not supposed to happen for 1 month. The clock had just shattered. Find cover, they barked, their voices thin with a mounting sense of dread. They tried to talk the recruits off the ledge as they trembled nearby. Wait 60 minutes, they lied. The manual says the door will reset itself. Do not panic, they repeated. Everything is under control. We are safe here. They promised a rescue, swearing the Hunter Corps was already on its way. I saw through the act. You do not bring kids into a tomb like this. I saw the truth. A sealed door in a place like this is just a pre-dug grave. If this went enclosed, we were trapped in a cage with a demon. Still, as long as I breathed, I would make sure everyone made it out. The instructors pulled away, their faces turning ashen in the flickering light. In the private shadows, the real truth finally slipped out between them. It is enclosed, one gasped. The other looked ready to collapse right there. He began to describe the nightmare we were now officially locked inside of. This shifting labyrinth seals shut only once an interloper steps inside. Our arrival triggered the lockdown. Now, the exit remains barred until every last beast here lies dead. We're trapped in a tangled hellscape, cut off from any rescue, forced to carve through a literal army. As the leads break the news, the air thickens with raw, suffocating panic. 6 of us, 4 rookies, 2 pros must purge this void blind, facing unknown horrors alone. Worse yet, our supposed mentors aren't even geared for a total lockdown scenario. Thus, we must improvise with what we've got and push deeper into the dark. The lead knows a single goblin spells doom, taking him 10 minutes just to drop one. His sole desperate gambit involves weaponizing the specialized gear strapped to the rookies. He weighs using us as human shields, banking on our armor while he strikes from behind. But guilt gnaws at him. He can't betray the souls he personally forged through fire. Honor forbids such cowardice. Despite their trembling hands, the students march forward, clinging to their guides. Suddenly, a foul chill hits me. I glance back at our trailing mentor. Sensing my sudden unease, the captain demands to know what I've spotted. We pivot to find the second officer clawing at his neck, gasping for non-existent air. He collapses, bile bubbling at his lips, before the captain hits the stone right beside him. Their mouths froth uncontrollably as consciousness slips away, leaving them both completely senseless. I rush over, checking their vitals before lying to the others that it's mere exhaustion. That scent, I know it. I hoist the bodies and hurl them toward the terrified students. I dump the dead weight on them and bark a command to stay put. "Guard the gate," I snap. "Do not move a single inch from this spot." Their frantic pleas fade as I break into a full sprint, vanishing into the abyss. Adrenaline surges through me. Finally, I understand exactly what's poisoning this air. Infernal miasma floored them, a dark residue I never imagined I'd find on this planet. Even elite protectors require shielding against this rot. For ordinary men, it's pure, instant lethality. Yet here it is, serving as a high-voltage battery for a necromancer like myself. Plunging further, the hazy origin of this concentrated corruption finally bleeds into view. My heart hammers with anticipation. I'm dying to witness the magnitude of this lurking threat. But as I reach the epicenter of the rot, total stillness. Only the violet hum of crystals greets me within this suffocating, silent tomb. Not a single beast leaves a footprint in this eerie, hollowed-out cavern. Then I tilt my head. The stench points directly to the shadow looming above. At last, a real challenger emerges, radiating waves of pure, unadulterated hellfire. A massive alpha hound clings there, its bloated frame throbbing with violent purple essence. 4 glowing eyes track me, framed by jagged fangs and talons honed for slaughter. This is the carnage I've thirsted for since the moment I returned. Stumbling upon a shadow stalker here is a gift I never dared to expect. Believe me, these nightmarish curs share nothing with your common backyard mutt. I first crossed paths with this breed a year into my nightmare in Isgard. Back then, I was a green novice, paralyzed by the sheer terror of such power. It nearly gutted me then. But I am no longer that pathetic, wide-eyed rookie. Now, I'm the monster in the dark. I welcome this reunion with a grin. Armed with forbidden sorcery, I know crushing this filth will be child's play. The beast drops from the rafters, a blur of shadow and teeth aimed at my throat. I cocked my fist back, that same white-knuckled grip I used on the training stones before I signed my life away to the core. My smirk was pure poison to the beast. It didn't hesitate, throwing its entire mass at me the second it saw an opening. "Thanks for the meal," I whispered, throwing a strike so lethal that the thing was airborne before it even felt my knuckles hit fur. It died instantly, and the massive flood of dark essence locked inside its monstrous body began to hemorrhage out. I didn't waste a second, pulling every scrap of that raw power into my own veins like a starving man at a banquet. The air still reeked of its copper-heavy blood, a stench that triggered every bad memory I had of this hellhole. The black sludge coating my skin was pure, unadulterated toxin. Most hunters die from the splash zone. 1 drop of darkhound blood usually turns human flesh into a rotting mess in seconds. I stared at my gore-covered palm, knowing the rules were different for me. Being a dark mage means mortality doesn't really apply. Their venomous blood is a joke to someone like me. That poison is just more fuel. I sucked every last drop of essence out of that nightmare until it was a husk. It was the best meal I'd had in years, but a cold realization was starting to settle in my gut. I couldn't stop thinking about how a beast like that, something meant to stay in the pits of Isgard, ended up in a low-level earth dungeon. Since the instructors were caught totally off guard, I was certain this was the first time the breach had ever been crossed like this. There wasn't a single word about dark essence in the training manuals or the monster guides they fed us at center. There is no way a brainless mutt like a dark hound hopped between dimensions on its own. My mind was racing, but I had a hunch. Only someone with my level of dark mastery could pull that off. Maybe a saint with divine backup could do it, but for anyone else, it is a total impossibility. Then again, I wondered if I was just being paranoid, trying to convince myself this was some weird one-off fluke. I grabbed the dead weight of the beast, ready to present my prize to the superiors and see their reaction. The lead instructor finally came to, jarred awake by the frantic shouting of the new recruits. He blinked, the sheer terror in their voices cutting through his grogginess as the kids started to settle down. Then, he let out a guttural scream, looking like a man who had just escaped the worst nightmare imaginable. The recruits jumped out of their skins, half expecting a zombie attack, but the instructors were just checking if everyone was okay. The kids managed to stammer out that they were fine, but the second they mentioned I had headed deeper into the shadows alone, the instructors looked like they had seen a ghost. As the details spilled out, the teachers' faces turned from pale white to a furious, shaking disbelief at my actions. My lead instructor was vibrating with shock, unable to process the sheer audacity of my move. He was probably already drafting the paperwork to have me expelled from the academy on the spot, but he knew he didn't have a leg to stand on, not after he had passed out while we were under his protection. He was just about to go on a rescue mission when one of the recruits pointed toward the back of the cave. There I was, stepping out of the dark with that massive dead beast slung over my shoulders like a trophy. Their jaws hit the floor again. Honestly, it was getting predictable at that point. They noticed the beast looked warped. I slammed the carcass down and told them to get a good look at it. They started poking at the remains, slowly realizing this was the exact thing that had knocked them cold. The other trainees were whispering, trying to wrap their heads around how a guy like me took down a titan. I ignored them, glancing toward the entrance just as the blue light of the portal gate flickered back to life. The instructor gripped my shoulder, his voice shaking as he asked if I really handled that thing solo. I did not say a word, just gave him a slow nod. I could see the sweat beading on his forehead. He barked an order for the other staff to get the kids out while he stayed to talk to me. The second the cave cleared out, he knew he finally had his chance to get the truth. Standing before the humming blue portal, the sergeant demands a full debrief on the carnage that just unfolded inside. I nod, telling him I have it handled. He wants total transparency, even if it means exposing how the instructors completely folded when things got lethal. Most guys would bury their mistakes, but this soldier is dangerously honest about his own failures. He hides his face, admitting they passed out instead of protecting the recruits, leaving us wide open for slaughter. He finishes by thanking me for keeping everyone alive, looking genuinely relieved that I stepped up. I feel the heat rise in my cheeks, awkward under the praise. He pulls his cap low to save face, muttering that a real man must own his wrongs. Then he signals that it is time to move. While he frets over explaining his blackout, I am just riding the high of actually surviving this hellish cave. Everyone is patting me on the back, and for once, life feels actually decent. But as I step through the portal, a digital ping informs me the system error is finally resolved. My heart sinks. What kind of cosmic joke is this system playing now? I curse this glitchy reality, but the screen just flickers, revealing my pathetic and diminished new status window. I have 60 points in strength, agility, and stamina, 10 demonic energy points, and 1 failing grade skill. I stare at the screen, hoping it is a prank because these numbers are straight up insulting. Then I see the title, Leader of the Lumi Nuna Fan Club, burned right into my profile. My face burns seeing that cringy past life highlight in my profile. It takes me back to the dumbest mistake of my entire existence. I started that fake cult as a joke back in Isgard just because I liked a video game girl. It was supposed to be a shield against the weirdos who would not leave me alone. Those freaks were always breathing down my neck, begging me to help them conquer the entire world. I thought a weird hobby would scare them off, but it only made them more obsessed with me. Looking at these stats, the reality hits that I am a weakling compared to my former self. I knew returning to Earth would cost me, but this dimensional tax is absolutely brutal. Out of my 1,000 legendary powers, only 1 low-level scrap remains in my arsenal. I can feel the veins in my neck bulging as pure, unadulterated annoyance washes over me. It feels like I am trapped in some bargain bin novel where the hero gets reset to level 1. The cliché makes me sick, but I have to find a way to make this work. I reach the top once in a hellscape. I can definitely climb back up here on Earth. The path ahead is now blindingly obvious. I need my power back fast before these spawning monsters ruin the game world I actually enjoy. I take a deep breath, forcing myself to believe that I can actually pull this off. Compared to the nightmare of Isgard, this training center drama should be a total walk in the park. But the base is a madhouse because the gate failed while a rookie took down a literal nightmare. I single-handedly deleted an apex predator that should not even exist in this realm. All this went down while the pros were snoring. Normally, we would be getting our ranks and heading out for some well-deserved drinks and freedom. Instead, we are all shoved into the barracks like prisoners. The guys are losing their minds, bored and pissed off because they cannot even watch the news. One kid corners my buddy, asking if I really killed that massive beast without any help. My friend confirms it, but the others doubt I will hit sergeant within 2 years given the impossible exams. I get called to the big office and snap a sharp salute to the man in charge. The commander acknowledges me, while the lieutenant grovels on the floor in a pathetic, twisted heap. The boss kicks the lieutenant out, leaving just the 2 of us in the heavy, silent room. The commander chuckles, mocking the lieutenant for failing to secure the prison cells correctly. The general settles into his chair, dismissing the formalities as he gestures for me to take a seat. I stare in disbelief as the commander indicates that the games are finally over. He explains that my record-breaking scores have earned me a very dangerous, exclusive proposition. He asks if I want to be the lone eagle among a flock of chickens. It is an old saying for someone who is light years ahead of their peers. He sits there, eyeing me like a high-stakes gambler who just found a winning card. He is relieved to find real talent in a sea of mediocre recruits. I have outclassed everyone so completely that they have become invisible to him. He knows that putting me in a regular squad would be a total waste. He has a specific, high-risk group in mind that needs someone with my edge. He acknowledges my ambition but mentions the mandatory 1-year wait for any promotion. Then, he offers to break every rule in the book just for me. My heart races at the thought, and he lets out a booming, predatory laugh. If I join the Chioran Hunters, he will use his clout to promote me instantly. He tells me I can seize this shortcut or rot in the infantry for a year. I let the silence settle between us as I weigh the price of this opportunity. He watches me closely, wondering if even I am afraid of the Chwin unit. My mind drifts to the terrifying rumors surrounding the Chioran front lines. That is where the 104th Squad lives, a place most soldiers call a graveyard. It is a frozen hellscape where monsters materialize out of the thin, freezing air. It is the most brutal war zone imaginable, and he is waiting for my move. I think it sounds perfect. I do not care where I go, as long as I climb. Besides, that promotion exception is the only thing that matters to me. A meat grinder full of dungeons is the perfect place for me to truly evolve. I have to advance at any cost to make my long-term plans a reality. I look him dead in the eye and accept the deal with total conviction. He is visibly shocked by my resolve, seeing nothing but cold ambition on my face. Outside the training facility gates, the new privates are huddled with their bags, looking like children in over their heads. Rocker is a total wreck, sobbing and begging me to stay in touch through the window. The other guys are just cringing at his pathetic, over-the-top goodbye. He asks why I would volunteer for hell. I tell him his mind could not handle my goals. The sunset bleeds across the horizon as we say our final goodbyes. He asks if my goal is to hit level 100 or something equally insane. I tell him I have done it 30 times already. He thinks I am completely mad. I leave him behind, his heart breaking as I walk toward a different fate. Once the noise dies down, the silence is deafening. I am the only one left. A massive military truck screeches to a violent halt right at my feet. A mountain of a man steps out, his eyes hidden behind thick, dark sunglasses. The name tag on his chest reads, Kim Mi. He grunts at me, complaining that the heavy snow delayed his arrival. I wonder how it is already snowing as I stare at the massive soldier. Mage turns on his heel and barks an order, leading me into the cold. My commander barked the order to move out, so I climbed into the truck's bed, bracing for the chaos ahead. I stared at the receding horizon, strangely relieved that my life as a grunt was finally beginning. Brutal drills and bloodthirsty beasts didn't scare me. I was built for the grind and the gore, but a cold knot twisted in my gut whenever I thought about the locker room rituals and systematic bullying. I had zero tolerance for mindless pranks or being some veteran's punchline. My fuse was already dangerously short. Logic told me to keep my head down and just take the hits until I climbed the ladder. As the wheels hummed, a dark thought surfaced. One snap of my temper against a superior meant a life sentence. The landscape outside was a deceptive masterpiece of quiet hills and sharp, clean architecture. I drifted off, waking only when the air turned frigid and white flakes began dusting the glass. Chioran was a frozen wasteland. I followed Mi through the iron halls of the Hunter Corps, heart hammering. Mi threw open a heavy door with his massive scarred hands, announcing my arrival to the pack of wolves. I scanned the room of tired recruits as Mage barked at them to get me fed and squared away. Their eyes lit up with a predatory hunger the second they realized fresh meat had just walked in. They swarmed me, whispering my name and trading rumors about that hellhound I'd supposedly gutted single-handedly. One guy snatched my gear, hurling it at a scrawny kid while demanding my bunk be made immediately. I sized up the room's self-appointed kings, but I caught a shift in the air that they didn't. Those idiots were grinning at me like I was a shiny new toy they couldn't wait to break. They cornered me, asking why a straight-A student would throw his life away in a dump like this. I told them the front lines were the only place to truly evolve, leaving them blinking in stunned silence. Their sneers shifted into twisted respect, as if they'd realized I was just as unhinged as they were. After the interrogation about my dating life hit a dead end, they demanded I prove I wasn't a fraud. I figured a quick demonstration might actually get these vultures off my back for 5 minutes. I held up a single digit, proposing one-finger push-ups, which only made one guy bark out in insulted rage. But the ringleader just leaned back, crossing his arms and daring me to actually go through with it. The room went deathly silent as I flipped vertical, supporting my entire weight on just my index finger. Their jaws hit the floor. They expected a parlor trick, not a feat of impossible gravity-defying strength. They started whispering about the only other freak in the unit who could pull off a stunt like that. Just as the tension peaked, the door creaked open and a shadow fell across the threshold of our barracks. The officer marched straight to me while I was still inverted and told me to get lost. That voice triggered a core memory. I knew exactly who was standing over me, Sergeant Leho himself. My heart skipped. Seeing my old drill instructor in this cramped room felt like a cruel joke from fate. The veterans didn't care. They started heckling him, mocking the fact that he'd been demoted to teaching grunts. They pestered him about his discharge date, poking the bear until his face turned a dangerous shade of red. Finally, he snapped, screaming that he only had 4 days left in this hellhole before storming off. The guys just laughed, flipped him the bird, and went back to their own business like nothing happened. Liho was fuming but powerless, and I was just relieved the spotlight had shifted away from me. He collapsed onto a bunk, ignoring the world to watch some footage of a lethal volcanic dungeon raid. It was jarring how a few square feet could contain such a massive, invisible wall of military hierarchy. The sergeant barked at a private named Dongjun to show the new kid how things worked around here. I doubted this guy was my superior, but he offered to talk over some snacks at the post exchange. We hit the shop, and Dongjun told me to grab whatever my heart desired, his treat. I loaded up, thinking I'd finally found the one decent human being in this entire godforsaken camp. The bill hit 300,001 credits, and I saw Dongjun's hands trembling as he swiped his card. While I inhaled the food, I asked why the hell we were usually banned from coming here. He explained that the hierarchy was absolute. Low-level grunts only got these privileges on the weekends, if ever. PFCs get gym rights, corporals get the web. The news made him nearly choke on dinner. Rank-based PC access is madness, yet we're stuck. I asked about changing the rules, surprising him. Only a sergeant can even try, he sighed. No gaming meant no escape. I was crushed. Promotions here are a brutal, uphill suicide mission. 3 years a private, he was living proof. I'll rise fast and pull him up too. Keep faith, I said, as a predator appeared. A corporal loomed. Dongjun offered him our meal. The parasite sat, inhaling our food and drinks. I watched that creep with pure, silent loathing. Live fire tomorrow, he spat. Attend or die. Dongjun tried explaining the local drills to me. The corporal mocked him, turning dinner into hell. He apologized, but the bullying only intensified further. I reached my limit. I wouldn't just watch. I channeled rot into his meal from below. He froze, face numb, unable to swallow corruption. Something's off, he wheezed, checking the food's date. Sweating, he limped away, clutching his stolen dignity. My dark skill bit deep. I grinned back. I asked him about the specialized firearms training. They use rounds that dwarf standard monster-killing ammo. The kickback was enough to shatter a man. Standard rounds are ponies. These are wild stallions. The recoil ruins even a master gunslinger's precision. We need the power. The metaphor fit perfectly. I recalled the heavy iron used in Isisgard. Compared to those elephants, these stallions were nothing. Training day arrived. We marched into the thunder. Gunfire roared through the cold concrete facility range. Muzzle flashes lit the room. I was firing. 19 bullseyes, 1 stray. I felt like failure. Roommates stood frozen. Dongjun looked at a god. They whispered cyborg as I held my weapon. The brass watched from above, completely mesmerized. How? They barked. I just followed the manual. A giant named Kim Yi offered grim approval. He's watching the special training. I felt intrigued. The alphas whined about favoritism, their egos bruised. Helmets on, he barked, silencing their petty complaints. The room cheered. I asked about the nightmare. He didn't know much, but his fear showed. We're paired up in this meat grinder, hunting freaks while racing toward the extraction point. These things aren't top-tier threats, but they move fast and they bite back. Cardboard civilians pop up everywhere. 1 stray bullet and you're disqualified instantly. Dongjun claims it's a controlled cage match with eyes on us the whole time, but he doesn't know me. Nothing beats the rush of a real hunt. I'm dying to see what monsters they've got next. Will I dominate the field, or is everything about to go sideways? We hit the mess hall after the range for a massive, hard-earned victory feast. Dongjun nearly choked when I notched 19 hits. I told him 13 wasn't half bad. He mumbled something about having a little trigger time in his past. Still, he's convinced Sergeant Lee is the only true natural killer in the unit. Lee usually pins 17 targets, making him the squad's undisputed top gun. Shoveling food, I realized if the average is 10, Lee is definitely elite. Except, strictly speaking, I just took his crown. Dongjun gave me a supportive pat, betting I'd smoke the upcoming live fire exercise. I asked why he sounded like he wouldn't be my wingman for the drill. He explained that the high-ranking brass handles all the team pairings. It's a total coin toss, so I asked how they actually decide who goes where. He'd heard a rumor they use a ladder lottery system to settle the brackets. Basically, it's just a glorified, high-stakes raffle for soldiers. It forces random synergy between strangers. Next thing I know, we're standing at the range. Sergeant Menji, a literal wall of a man, stood there barking out orders. "Vests on, stand by, 5 minutes until we go live," he roared. The room was buzzing with nervous chatter about the hell we were walking into. I tried to stay focused, but peace and quiet never last long for me. Some loudmouth starts yelling, turns out I'm paired with that hazing-obsessed prick of a corporal. He swaggered over, bragging that a lowly private couldn't possibly touch his level of expertise. My heart sank. Of all the people here, why did I get the office bully? One look at him and I knew the guy hadn't learned a single lesson. He barked that the average finish is 3 minutes and I'd better beat it. With a wicked grin, he warned that I'd regret it if I fell behind. I just stared right through him, stone-faced, which clearly ticked him off. He started badgering me, claiming my 19-shot streak was just a total fluke. Inside, I was just exhausted. The guy is a complete and utter lost cause. I gave him a dry, I'll try my best just to shut his mouth. He didn't care. He just threatened to end me if I finished after him. He jerked a thumb toward the first team and told me to watch and learn. Mangi and Hanong hit their separate elevators, while the sergeant called out the ready check. They dropped into the dark. This training was a different animal entirely. Partners are split into separate lifts and plunged into a subterranean kill zone. It's meant for search and destroy, but today, the vibe felt way more aggressive. It turned into a cutthroat race to see who's the fastest, cleanest killer. The only goal is to punch the clock at the finish before your partner. I scanned the scoreboard, confused by why the monster icons varied in size. Scale indicates threat, the corporal spat. The bigger the icon, the deadlier the freak. He starts breaking down the rules of this twisted gauntlet for me. Each path hides 2 beasts, but which ones you face is pure luck. Total blind luck. You never know what's lurking until it's lunging at your throat. Right now, some poor soul is staring down a massive, lethal rake toad. That tongue lashes out like a whip. Looks like the kid drew the short straw today. The monitors show him struggling against a beast way above his pay grade. I realize speed won't save me from bad luck. My rival is definitely going to catch up. Predictably, the other guy gets an easy kill, turning a giant rodent into Swiss cheese. He struts off smugly, until a massive, towering earthworm surges from the dirt to humble him. Back in the other lane, the first guy just got served a second helping of hell. He's fuming, having burned through a whole magazine just to put that second one down. He figures he's lost for sure, but the finish line is eerily quiet, no one's there yet. A grin spreads across his face as he slams the buzzer to claim victory. The siren wails at 2 minutes and 24 seconds as the crowd buzzes about the sand room. The winner gloats while the loser blames fate, now owing a debt at the local shop. Heading back, they realize speed wasn't the only problem today. He clipped a civilian, meaning he's disqualified. The corporal watches them bicker over their petty wager. The mention of a gamble sparks something in me. I'm suddenly very interested. I catch the corporal off guard, proposing a bet where the winner gets one absolute wish. He laughs in my face, but his arrogance makes him agree to humor my little game. He claims a private has nothing he wants, yet his eyes say he's got something planned. If I lose, I'm handing over 3 months of my hard-earned pay to him. Chasing money is so predictably petty, but I agree. He's already counting the cash in his head. Dongjun watches our exchange, his face tightening with worry for my sake. Mage calls the next heat. The corporal and I board our lifts, steeling ourselves for the descent. Asked for any final words, we both stay silent, eyes locked forward. The descent begins. I'm sinking into the darkness, drowned in my own heavy thoughts. I let him bait me. Now I've got eyes on me I never wanted. Call me immature, but I've never been the type to just take a hit lying down. The doors slide back, and my darker instincts scream the monsters are close. Upstairs, the peanut gallery is glued to the screens, waiting for the bloodbath. They're whispering about our bet, baffled that a private would dare challenge a corporal. A violent tremor suddenly rips through the floor, nearly knocking everyone sideways. Terror takes hold as the ground bucks like a wild animal. Was that an earthquake? They stammer. Dongjun shakes his head. He knows that wasn't a natural shift. On screen, a beast stalks its own kind while I step out, questioning that violent tremor. My pupils blow wide as my gut warns me something is seriously wrong. A cyclopean nightmare with massive talons is busy shredding a giant rat for lunch. This is it, the most dangerous thing I've ever faced on this planet. I force my heart to slow, though the cannibalism in front of me is unsettling. It spots me. I stare right back into that singular hideous orb. The beast roars, hurls its half-eaten prey at me, but I dodge the flying carcass. As my boots hit the concrete, a single, absurd thought strikes me. I'm wondering if it's fried chicken night at the mess hall. I need to finish this fast. A bystander target is in the way, no wild spraying. The titan lunges at me. I channel the dark power into my fist, wondering why this thing is so damn angry. This brute tried swiping at me with those massive hooks, but I met its fury with a fist packed with pure shadow energy. My strike sliced straight through its limb, 3 clean surgical cuts. The thing shrieked as its hand fell away in pieces. I just watched and smirked. I was ready to end it. But then the impossible happened. The stump started knitting itself back together right there. And get this, it wasn't just growing flesh back. A massive blade sprouted where its hand used to be. Back at HQ, the guys were watching this nightmare unfold on their monitors. They were losing their minds, wondering where the other freak went. Then it clicked for me. One missing beast meant the other had to be a cyclops, a devouring demon. These things are batteries. They eat energy to fuel their healing and power. Ninji was confused, though. These monsters don't usually flip out unless they're cornered. He couldn't figure out why it snapped, escaped its cage, and cannibalized its partner. The trigger was me, my dark aura, and the twisted smile I wore. I was dancing around the Cyclops' wild swings, taking our fight high into the air. I could have ripped it apart with my bare hands, but hey, this was firearms training, so I decided to play along. I opened up on its face, lead shredding its central eye until it roared in pure pain. I hit the dirt as it thrashed. Its eye was healing slow, plenty of time to wrap this up. Suddenly, the monster locked onto me. I charged in for the kill, but it caught me off guard with a vicious swing of that sword arm. Somehow the blind bastard still knew exactly where I was. I barely pulled a total Matrix move under the blade. It didn't miss a beat, using its free hand to slam me face first into the concrete. It looked like game over, but I caught its fist. As I held back tons of pressure, I realized how weird this was. No way a standard training sim would throw a killer this aggressive at us. Even with its eye blown out, it tracked my every move with terrifying precision. That's when the light bulb went off. Was it hunting my energy signature? Cut to. The elevator chimes open. Menji burst into the second lane, clutching his heavy machine gun, terrified for my life. He was eating himself alive with guilt. A powered-up Cyclops is a death sentence for a low-level private. He sprinted down the hallway, praying he wouldn't find my corpse. Meanwhile, that arrogant corporal was feeling himself. He'd clocked 2 minutes and 30 seconds and figured I was toast. He was already mentally spending my paycheck. Dreaming of a tropical vacation, he neared the finish line only to have his heart drop through his shoes. I was already there, casually leaning against the finish button. I gave him a dead-eyed stare, let a slow, wicked grin spread across my face, and slammed the button home. The corporal looked like his entire world just imploded. Menji finally reached the scene of the carnage. He stared at the carcass, trying to reconcile gun training with the absolute massacre in front of him. The thing's upper half was a total gore fest. When the corporal and I exited the lift, the room erupted. Everyone was losing it, cheering because I'd actually taken down a fed Cyclops. Dongjun ran up, checking me for holes. I told him I was fine, not even a scratch. When he asked how I pulled it off, I just told him I followed his lead. The corporal, though? He was turning purple with rage. Someone pointed out I'd won the bet. The corporal just smacked the guy. He started barking that the whole thing was rigged and the bet was off. He started babbling excuses about how he couldn't have predicted this. He argued the test was for 2 monsters, which he killed, whereas I only took out 1. He pointed fingers, screaming about fairness, and tried to bully Dongjun into backing him up. Poor Dongjun just stood there, shrinking under the pressure of the corporal's glare. The corporal kept barking orders, and I just stood there wondering how one person could be such a pathetic loser. Bare-knuckle killing that beast left a bitter taste. I'd have walked away, but he wouldn't stop. Boots crunched on gravel as the crowd parted. Scared of a rookie, the corporal turned pale. The stranger called Cyclopes harmless usually, until they snap. The kid faced a massacre. Then we saw him, Sergeant Lee Yunho. His timing was perfect. The corporal withered. He tried to talk back. Lee crushed him. Just a joke. Lee didn't blink. Losing isn't a punchline, Corporal. Rank humbles idiots. I took notes. He was fuming, drowning in his shame. Pure justice. You felt that too, right? Lee stared. Got something to say? No, sir. He folded instantly. He stood there, small and pathetic. Sunset cleaning chores. We talked double promotions. Lee was a genius. Broke every record. That path is dead now. One screw-up ruined it for everyone. Shortcuts? Only saving a life. Or battlefield miracles. Totally subjective. Forget it, Dongjun warned. It is over. Subjective meant the brass had to watch. I was starving for that rank. I needed chaos. The border was silent. 2 days in, already itching for blood. Then, the sirens tore the night open. Middle bats at the fuel reserve. Emergency. Shields up. Move or die. Child-sized swarms. A tide of teeth. 1 is nothing. 1,000 is death. They spit fire. Near oil, we are ash. The guards were frozen, staring at death. Don't shoot, one hissed, slamming the gun. Provoke them, and this whole base vaporizes. We just sit here and pray, wait for the shields. Hold position. They were counting seconds against eternity. What if they hit the tanks? I saw the explosion. A white-hot end. Terror took hold of the line. I will draw them off, I said, stepping out. I walked toward the swarm. They screamed. I viewed those winged freaks as nothing more than golden tickets to a fast promotion. Not only would I be the hero of the base, but I would soak up a mountain of experience. I marched toward them, letting my dark energy flare. My mind flashed back to the Cyclops. These things are drawn to my power like moths to a flame. The swarm caught my scent and closed in. I grinned, ready to tear through my prey. A frantic squad scrambled toward the oil tanks, lugging a massive equipment crate. Suddenly, the whole unit froze in their tracks. Sergeant Lee barked at the cowards to get the perimeter shield up immediately. They just stood there, mouths hanging open, unable to find their words. Finally, they blurted it out. Private Kim Yoon was taking on the entire swarm alone without any gear. Lee did not give a damn about the heroics and screamed for them to deploy the shields. Meanwhile, I was busy ripping wings apart. It felt too slow. I needed something with more bite. Sergeant Lee's voice cut through the chaos behind me, ordering me to pull back. I tuned him out. I was not leaving until every last drop of experience was mine. Then I saw the shock baton on Lee's belt. I sent a pulse of dark energy straight into his gut. Lee doubled over, thinking his breakfast was finally catching up to him. I rushed over, faking concern. I snatched the baton before he could blink, promising to return it in a second. My grin widened. Now, the real party was starting. I dived back into the fray, swinging that electric rod like a madman. I was dropping multiple targets with every strike, loving every second of the slaughter. Lee just stood there, his face a mask of total, unadulterated shock. He watched as I systematically dismantled the swarm, realizing I was playing a different game entirely. Two grunts, lugging gear, spotted a stray bat hovering right above them. The creature looked demonic, eyeing the oil reserves with burning eyes and a mouth full of fire. Lee ordered the men to open fire, swearing he would take the heat for the command. They leveled their rifles, but then froze, staring up in utter confusion. Right behind the beast, I appeared out of thin air, baton raised and a smirk on my face. One heavy swing and it was over. Electricity danced across the sky as I crushed the monster's skull. Below me, the squad was left scratching their heads, wondering how I had even reached that height. The troops finally got the shield humming. They huddled inside, tossing 30 charred bat carcasses into a pile. A voice barked for Lee. He snapped a salute to Captain Junchik, the operations officer. Junchik offered a nod of approval before asking how those bats slipped past the radar undetected. The captain caught the scent of burnt meat and asked who turned the monsters into a barbecue. Lee reported 30 kills while scanning the area for the battalion commander. He informed the captain that the big boss would be arriving shortly. Internally, Lee fumed over the captain's convenient disappearance during the actual crisis. He figured the guy was just hiding in the control room. The captain cut him off, asking if he was the one who fried them. Lee shook his head, knowing only an expert with a shock baton could leave those marks. The captain demanded to know the identity of the soldier. Lee told him one man took down all 30 and to report it exactly like that. The captain's jaw dropped. He could not wrap his head around one person wiping out a whole swarm solo. I strolled up behind them right then, telling Lee I was back to return his gear. I handed him a mangled mess of wires. Hope this was not pricey, because it is total junk now. After that stunt, the cat was out of the bag. I had shown too much, and now everyone was watching. Later, in the commander's office, Lee looked me dead in the eye and asked if I was some undercover veteran. Why we were in the big office, I had no clue, but the vibe was heavy. I played dumb, even when he asked if I had traveled back in time. He told me to never pull a stunt like that again. Then he warned me that my luck was bound to run out eventually. My luck was a finite resource, and I knew it. I kept my mouth shut while Lee misread my survival instincts for mere fortune. Sergeant Lee started preaching again, painting the Hunter Corps as some elite, untouchable brotherhood of warriors. We were lean and lethal 4 small battalions with far fewer boots on the ground than the regular army. There was a darker reason for those thin ranks. The awakened usually died or deserted. I didn't say a word. Drawing attention to myself in this place was a death sentence I wasn't ready to sign. Lee turned into a walking recruitment poster, asking if I truly grasped the gravity of our situation. I gave him my best blank stare, playing the role of a confused rookie who didn't know left from right. His voice dropped to a reverent growl. Every single soul in this unit possessed a supernatural spark. Not everyone was a killer, though. Many were just pencil pushers, gearheads, or theorists studying the abyss. I faked a gasp of surprise. I'd spent my life thinking the Corps was strictly for the frontline slaughter. Lee set me straight quickly. It didn't matter if you were a clerk or a commando. Results were the only currency that mattered, and you needed that gift just to get in the door. I stared at the towering sergeant, wondering why I was getting a philosophy lecture before sunrise. He promised me that if I wanted excitement, I was about to get a face full of it. My pulse quickened. What kind of hell did this magnificent bastard have in store for me? A black sedan sliced through the morning mist, rolling toward headquarters like a shark in shallow water. The plates bore 2 golden stars. The 104th Battalion's local celebrity had finally arrived. The man with the highest kill count sat in the back, chauffeured around by a high-ranking colonel. The engine cut out as the car stopped dead in the center of the yard. A wall of a man stepped out. This predator was here to teach us, and I felt the air grow cold. Colonel Junium snapped a salute so hard his arm vibrated, shouting a greeting that shook the windows. The rest of the brass fell into line immediately, their spines stiff with fear. Captains were sweating bullets as the living legend approached and shook hands with Sergeant Liho. Liho looked rattled, struggling to keep his military bearing while being acknowledged by a god of war. I watched from the sidelines. This guy looked far too energetic for someone who hunted monsters for breakfast. A 2-star rank in the Corps wasn't just a title, it meant he was something more than human. He walked straight to me, calling my name. I took his hand, masking my complete lack of interest. His grip felt like a closing vice. He wasn't just shaking hands, he was weighing my soul. He slapped my back with enough force to shatter bone, then barked at everyone to stand down. He demanded the gate's location. The commander pointed to a hill 1.2 kilometers north of us. They'd already locked the area down and were trying to gauge the severity of the threat. The general ordered a direct line to the division commander once the gate's rank was confirmed. He grilled them about the radar. Those bat demons were on our doorstep before the alarm even tripped. The captain stammered about equipment checks and blind spots, desperate to avoid the blame. The veteran just nodded. He'd seen this disaster movie before. He blamed the sheer volume of the swarm and ordered 2 more radar units installed immediately. The captain barked his agreement, showing total submission to the 2-star legend. I just stood there, enjoying the show, watching the tough guys turn into quivering piles of nerves. Then he faced me, praising my guts but calling me an idiot for fighting without proper gear. I apologized out loud while thinking that waiting for gear would have left this base in ashes. But then his stern face broke into a grin. He was messing with me. He was actually impressed I'd taken down the swarm and saved the fuel depot. The captains looked like they'd been slapped, unable to process the praise I was receiving. They wanted a piece of that glory, but cowards don't get invited to the winner's circle. He pinned a new rank to my chest, a reward that felt more like a target painted on my back. "Kid, this isn't standard protocol," the general muttered, pinning the new rank on my chest. "But legends don't wait for paperwork. You earned this promotion the hard way." Just like that, I was Private First Class Kim Yoon. I felt a surge of pride. He handed me a 3-day, 2-night pass, a reward that left my head spinning with disbelief. Finally, some real freedom. I could practically hear the neon hum of the local gaming cafe. Military life was finally dealing me a winning hand, and the stakes were rising. As I walked out with Captain Kim, he couldn't stop singing my praises in that hallway. He was riding my coattails, clearly thrilled that my performance made him look like a genius. I played it cool, thanking him while he asked what a guy like me does for fun. It would be my first time seeing the world outside those gates since enlisting. The city hit me like a fever dream, blinding lights, roaring traffic, and a sea of strangers. I moved through the crowds with a new confidence, my boots clicking against the pavement. My mission was simple: find a terminal and get back into the digital world. I needed a fix of Dungeon Power Fighter. Going home wasn't an option. It felt like a cage. Besides, that place was a dead zone. No signal, no connection, no escape from reality. My entire 3-day leave would be spent in a glowing booth, far from any responsibilities. I was almost inside when a heated argument broke out between 2 guys nearby. One pressed the other, asking if he'd been foolish enough to return to that forbidden cave. The guy in the cap complained about getting blocked while picking mushrooms, despite paying the owner. He looked parched, practically begging his friend for a drink to wash down the frustration. His buddy just scoffed, mentioning a toxic, sickening stench that had completely ruined the mountain air. He warned that whoever went in there came out with a splitting headache for days afterward. The mushroom hunter muttered about wearing a mask, but I had already heard enough. I stepped in, asking for directions. They froze, looking at my uniform with wide, nervous eyes. They traded a look of pure uncertainty before finally deciding to lead me to the source. Instead of pointing the way, they offered me a ride, sensing I wasn't taking no for an answer. They dropped me off at a dusty roadside on the outskirts of a place called Huetan. "Restricted zone," the big guy said, his voice trembling as he asked if I could fix it. I met his gaze with a cold, unwavering stare that told him everything he needed to know. "The ban lifts tomorrow," I promised, my PFC stripes catching the sunlight as they stared in awe. They didn't say another word, just peeled away, leaving me alone with the mountain's shadow. They weren't looking for trouble, but I was. I could feel the dark energy pulsing within. I traded my gaming chair for a trek into the unknown, drawn to a different kind of power. The air carried a familiar, sharp, metallic scent that I knew better than my own name. I saw it thick, violet mists of demonic rot. It was beautiful. I wanted it all for myself. Armed guards stood like statues at the mouth of the cavern, blocking my path. They were masked up to survive the atmosphere. I watched from the brush, calculating my move. Security was tight, but I hadn't come this far just to turn around and go home. I didn't want a scene. I flicked my wrist, releasing a subtle wave of my own darkness. It drifted like a ghost, invisible and silent, until it was deep inside their lungs. Within seconds, they were doubling over, clutching their stomachs as the illness took hold. They tried to maintain their posts, but the internal agony was a war they couldn't win. Assuming no one was around to see, they broke formation to find a place to retch. The threshold was clear. No guards, no witnesses, just the open mouth of the abyss. I stepped into the shadows, the cavern shimmering with a toxic glow that felt like home. But a major snag hit me. My palms pressed into the dirt, searching for a pulse, yet the silence in that cavern was absolute. I wondered why the air felt like thick, dark static if the place was empty, but I forged ahead anyway. I just needed that fix of wicked energy, so I started drawing every drop of it into my soul. The darkness surged through my hands, fueling the hunger for power while my stats began to climb. The numbers ticked upward steadily until a flashing alert confirmed I had finally crossed the forbidden threshold. Just like that, my talent for corruption evolved into something far more potent. I also unlocked a fresh skill called Nightwalker, and honestly, I was over the moon about this windfall. This was a total win for me, upgrading an old trick while scoring a lethal new one. Looking at my status screen, I realized how much pure luck it took to bag this for free. My physical attributes were locked at 60, while my dark energy pool finally hit 15 points. I stared at my hand, feeling the unearned power buzzing through me like a high-voltage current. It was a massive victory. I could now pull a literal shadow assassin out of thin air. I remembered this trick well from my brutal days spent in the trenches of Isgard. This ghost excelled at silent takedowns from the safety of the void, though every gift has a price. To keep him tethered to this world, I had to feed him my own dark essence constantly. I raised my arms, beckoning the void, and ordered my new phantom to step into the light. He looked deceptively harmless, but I knew he was more dangerous than anyone could possibly imagine. When he finally emerged, I was floored by how tiny he was. Was this some cosmic travel tax? I wondered if he was shrunken because my dark reserves were still too shallow to sustain him. This was a total mess. I expected a towering behemoth, not some pint-sized disappointment. I worried the sun would just swallow this weakling whole until the real strategy finally clicked. His small stature meant he could vanish into any crack. He wasn't weak, he was the ultimate hidden blade. Beneath that cute exterior lived a cold-blooded killer, and soon enough, my 3-day leave was over. Back at headquarters, I threw a sharp salute and told the squad I was back from vacation. My fellow soldiers swarmed me the second I stepped into the barracks. They'd heard I was the fastest riser in history, bagging a commander's favor and a 2-stars badge. I looked past the crowd and saw my buddy Dongjun, for whom I'd actually brought back a souvenir. I handed him some moisturizer, a weird gift for soldiers who usually prefer the grit of the field. Dongjun just nodded his thanks, looking genuinely touched. He held the bottle like a prize, just as the unit's resident loudmouth decided to start trouble. This jerk, whom I'd crushed in training, started mocking us and demanding his special magazines. But all I brought back for him were some instant coffee packets that shared the same brand name. He snatched the coffee, looking completely deflated and annoyed as he slunk away into the shadows. We were joking about me making corporal when the redhead and his pet snake crashed the party. The lackey sneered that the test application window had slammed shut before I even arrived at base. I hadn't even been enlisted for a full year, which technically made me ineligible for any promotion. Red figured the division commander must have pulled some major strings to get me in the door. The guys traded glances, finally showing me some real respect now that I was a private first class. They stood there with bated breath, waiting for me to explain how I'd skipped the line. I told them the training commander himself had pulled me aside with a special proposition. He'd sent me here on a personal whim because he was obsessed with seeing how far I'd climb. I gave them the full, unvarnished story and then waited for the inevitable explosion of envy. Their faces were masks of pure bewilderment. They couldn't wrap their heads around my sudden ascent. Red just shook his head, calling me a total maniac for trying to conquer the ranks so fast. My sergeant praised my guts for this. He noted that as a private first class, acing this exam meant an immediate promotion. The guys were all whispering that if I actually pulled it off, I'd be the most feared recruit in the 104th Battalion, while the current corporal was already drinking away his sorrows. My buddy mentioned the orientation was first, followed by some high-stakes specialty weapons training that sounded like a total nightmare. They warned me I'd be suffering for the entire week. Leaving the room, they joked about why 2 sergeants like them weren't the ones taking the advancement exams right now. I fixated on the specialty weapons part, wondering if it differed much from the usual firearms drills I'd mastered. Fast forward to the hunter exam orientation. The instructor was already barking orders about the brutal schedule we were about to face. I sat there as he tore into the cocky kids who thought they already knew everything about the testing process. I stayed sharp while the corporal beside me drifted off. He explained the 2-phase hell, a written test followed by a grueling practical application. The written portion was a joke, basic stuff designed to be cleared without breaking a sweat. I walked out feeling untouchable, knowing the practical was where the real blood would be spilled. It was a raw test of stats, blade proficiency, and how well you handled actual monsters. I knew I'd pass, but I wondered what kind of bonus I'd get for another perfect score. Walking down the corridor, I decided to stop playing around and get serious about this whole examination. Dawn broke, and it was time for close quarters combat. We're talking blades, daggers, maces, the messy stuff for when things go south. The instructor loomed over us like a predator, ready to show us how to actually get things done. He snapped that all low-level privates were restricted to swords, no fancy toys allowed today. The academics cheered. He then banished the corporals to go train elsewhere, threatening to bury anyone caught slacking off. He told us rookies we'd be learning the standard-issue swordsmanship from the Hunter Corps handbook. But then came the warning. Following the guidelines to the letter would just get us killed. He demanded we use the basics as a skeleton to build our own lethal, adaptable fighting styles. "Understand," he roared, his voice rattling my teeth. Every rookie shouted back in agreement. We didn't have a choice. He told us to watch his every move and ignore everything else in the world. Even if a goddess stood there naked, our eyes had to stay locked on his blade. He unsheathed his steel and became a blur. It was pure liquid violence, jumping, slashing, and dancing through the air. The man had clearly mastered the lethal art of the blade. As the dust settled, I watched him closely, realizing this wasn't just another boring military drill. This was the real specialty training, and I was itching to finally cut loose and show off my moves. You can't shoot your way out of every corner. Eventually, you need a cold piece of steel in your hand. The other rookies were flailing around, their footwork as graceful as a bunch of newborn giraffes. I, however, let the blade lead, making the air scream as I channeled the weapon's true, hidden potential. I understood the flow perfectly, while everyone else was drowning in their own lack of skill. My steel bit into the wind, though I still missed Isgard. I launched upward, slicing the atmosphere, leaving visible trails in the air that left the other rookies staring in absolute silence. Technical perfection was everything. I made sure every single witness saw exactly what a master looked like. The instructor suddenly barked a halt and gestured for me to step up to the podium. I acknowledged him and headed up, racking my brain for whatever rule I might have broken this time. I approached the stage slowly, sword gripped tight, my mind racing as I faced the crowd. He told the class their forms were trash and that they needed to mirror my every move. I was floored. I knew I was talented, but getting a public shout-out from this hard-ass was something I didn't see coming. He raised his pointer and commanded them to copy me exactly. I stepped forward and unleashed my skills again. My strikes were a symphony of violence compared to the clumsy hacking of the other recruits. The instructor just kept nodding, using me as the target for everyone's envy and my own future downfall. My blade whistled, carving through the stagnant air before I collapsed onto both knees. The others stood frozen. They couldn't even dream of matching that level of skill. I sat there exhausted, playing instructor to green recruits all day. Suddenly, a heavy presence loomed directly behind me. The instructor praised my form while slipping a secret item into my palm. "Eat this alone," he whispered. I worried about the hidden cost, but the tension in the air felt more like a warning. I gripped the small packet, wondering why a man of his rank carried contraband in the field. I prepared to tear it open when a sudden shadow broke my concentration. It was Dong Jun, begging for a technique critique during the break. I shoved the gift away, heart hammering. He claimed the sword was his soul, his only chance at surviving the front lines. But the monsters were winning. He needed my guidance, desperate for any edge to stay alive. I lacked the words, but he was my brother. I agreed to help him find his strength. I watched him drill while leaning against the stone wall, secretly fueling up on the mystery snack. The chocolate hit my tongue. He had clearly been grinding for months, his body bearing the scars. His technique wasn't the flaw. He lacked a soul-deep fire that no amount of training could provide. My friend was drowning in a crisis of confidence, a silent killer in our profession. I recognized that fear immediately. It was the same ghost that nearly broke me back in Isgard. Today wasn't the moment to fix him, but a day of transformation was coming under my watch. I would forge him into a lethal hunter, a warrior defined by pure, unshakable self-assurance. The waiting game finally ended as the promotion boards arrived, signaling the start of our trial. Headquarters hummed with a nervous energy as soldiers tried to distract themselves from the looming pressure. Some lost themselves in pop music and idols, while others blew off steam on the basketball court. Sports were our only escape until the public address system screamed to life, shattering the peace. Every candidate for the advancement exams was ordered to report to the training grounds immediately. Panic rippled through the ranks, but I stood like a statue, ready for whatever hell awaited me. My pulse steadied with one thought. Today, I would finally earn my stripes as a corporal. Sunlight bleached the gravel as we lined up, our faces tight with a mix of hope and terror. Lieutenant Kim stepped forward, his reputation as a legendary hardass preceding him as he surveyed the line. He declared himself our shepherd through this gauntlet, though his eyes promised nothing but pain. Silence fell as he began a meticulous head count, ensuring every single unit was present and accounted for. A transport bus screeched to a halt. We were heading to the 105th Division. We boarded in a cold, orderly fashion while the officer explained the remote site for the final evaluation. The engine roared as we were told to study our materials one last time during the transit. Tension inside the bus was suffocating, so I focused on the hushed whispers coming from the back row. They were buzzing about the 4th Battalion joining the mix at the testing grounds. It meant the female units would be present, a rare distraction in this isolated military grind. One guy was already bragging about showing off his skills just to get their phone numbers later. I just stared out the window, a bitter smirk tugging at my lips as they laughed. Their arrogance was just noise. The scenic mountain views were far more interesting than their delusions. The landscape shifted into a fortress of razor wire and steel gates as we crossed the perimeter. I found myself in testing room 7, the air heavy with the scent of nervous sweat. The pens dropped and the silence grew thick as the results were finally tallied by the staff. The proctor stood up and announced that the entire room had cleared the bar, except for one man. It was the same loudmouth from the bus. Now, he was the room's absolute laughingstock. His face drained of all color as reality set in. His journey ended right here, in humiliation. Outside, the mockery was brutal, his peers comparing his failure to failing a simple driving test. I was completely zoned out, lost in my own private world of bliss. We marched in a rigid line for the physicals when a familiar face appeared. The girl with sapphire hair stood there, watching every recruit march past her. Within the grand walls of the 105th headquarters, a speech echoed. Soldiers packed the hall while the commander praised our progress through the meat grinder. Lieutenant Colonel Lee took the podium, just another faceless cog in the military machine. He ran the advancement trials, looking for more than just warm bodies for promotion. This was a televised rivalry, a bloodless war between 3 competing divisions. I fought back a yawn, desperate for the real action to finally begin. Then Lee mentioned the outliers, the few here on special merit alone. He called my name, followed by Sun Yunio, the girl with the blue hair. We were the exceptional hunters who had proven our lethality in just 1 year. Finding another freak of nature in this crowd actually made me smile. Nobody listened to the colonel's droning anymore, except for the desperate, rule-bound nerds. They whispered about the frontline service that granted us this shortcut to power. Others muttered about the 104th and why I'd chosen the hard path. Rumors of my rank spread, and suddenly every eye was burning into me. I turned heads everywhere, even catching the blue-haired girl's cold, distant gaze. I ignored the crowd. Their wide-eyed curiosity was just background noise to me. When Sun caught me looking back, she blushed and quickly stared at the floor. I played it cool, pretending I hadn't noticed her sudden moment of weakness. The speech ended, and finally, a man of actual power took the stage. Captain Jang Sangol stepped up to launch the tests of raw, physical grit. The opening trial was a test of pure, unadulterated strength. The goal was simple: push back a human fortress named Dave Podesta. It felt like basic training. 60 seconds was plenty of time for this task. Moving him 10 meters earned a perfect 100-point score. We lined up before the chalk squares, waiting to be summoned for the slaughter. A recruit named Kim from the 103rd Division was called first. He was a mountain of meat, his shirt failing to contain his massive frame. He lunged at Podesta, throwing his entire desperate soul into the shove. The giant didn't budge, while Kim turned purple from the sheer physical exertion. With a lazy tap, Podesta sent the hulking man flying across the room. The supposed champion was disqualified before he even realized he had failed. You needed 40 points to survive. The remaining crowd began to panic. Watching that effortless domination made my own blood run cold with fear. Podesta swatted the rest like flies. Scores were abysmal across the entire board. The instructors grew furious as recruit after recruit failed to measure up. Finally, the mood shifted when a real contender stepped into the ring. Sun Yunio faced the giant, trembling but refusing to back down. She shocked the room, securing a 50-point score on her first attempt. No one could believe this frail girl succeeded where the giants had failed. She shoved him 5 meters and walked away with absolute confidence. The men were either mesmerized or bitter, claiming she was a general's daughter. Their pathetic jealousy only proved that she was on a completely different level. She glanced back, and I knew she was judging the losers just like I was. She cut through her fan club, but I was the only one who didn't stare. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about her. She was an outlier, just like me. Now, the spotlight was mine. It was time to show them real power. I stepped up, announcing my rank as a private first class for everyone to hear. I walked toward Dave Bautista, already visualizing exactly how I was going to break him. I knew I had to hold back the redstone energy. If I didn't, Bautista would be a dead man. But if I cleared 33 feet, there was a bonus. I decided to go for broke. I planted my feet, splayed my fingers, and gave a violent shove. Batista went flying. I'm certain no one had ever moved that mountain. The crowd went pale with envy and fear. Luckily, Bada landed on his feet. He wasn't just a tank, he was quick as a cat. His boots tore through the platform, leaving a trail of splintered wood behind him. Batista was fuming, and the proctor was speechless. I was the only one to bag a perfect 100. I just grinned. I knew this was coming, but the blue-haired brat didn't have a clue. I walked off feeling Sun's eyes on me, only to realize the bonus was a total lie. I wasn't the last one up. There were still plenty of people left to fail. One girl left sobbing after failing to nudge the giant even 3 feet. Instant disqualification. The rest of the candidates just stood there, wondering why the hell this was so hard. The strength trial ended, and agility started immediately. No breaks. No breathing room. The washouts were marched away, looking absolutely crushed by their own failure. Staff scrambled to swap out the gear, bringing in fresh equipment for the speed trial. They struggled to hoist a massive green net, clearly fumbling with the heavy mesh. Then they rolled out a minigun. It looked like a tank killer, but it was just our next nightmare. The candidates stared at the barrel, their faces completely drained of color. Everyone worried about dodging rounds after burning their strength on a behemoth like Batista. The proctor laughed, finally announcing that we'd be dancing through a hail of rubber bullets. Rubber or not, those rounds were screaming out of that high-velocity cannon. To put it simply, getting hit was going to hurt like hell. He told us to dodge everything. Nerves were shot. One mistake meant a world of pain. While everyone else was shaking, I just smirked. Things were finally getting interesting. The gunner was ready for blood. The objective, survive the storm for 60 seconds. If you could endure the barrage for a full minute, you'd walk away with a perfect score. The catch? You had to stay pinned inside that net's narrow kill zone. What really spooked them was knowing you could pass just by tanking the hits for a minute. Just stay inside that net for 60 seconds, and you'd pass with flying colors. Run out before 30 seconds or get crippled, and you were done. The clock was about to start when I heard a familiar voice behind me. I whipped around, shocked to see my buddy, Private Dongjun, waving with a cocky grin. I was floored. I had no idea he'd actually survived the strength trial. He laughed, asking if I really thought my best friend was going to fail that easily. I played it cool and denied it, even though I'd totally written him off. Dongjun told me the regulars had seen this before, so they were used to the format. They were only failing because the bar was set way higher for our rank. He leaned in close to drop a vital piece of advice. These rounds fly at real deal speeds. Don't try to dodge what you see with your eyes. As the first rounds hissed out, he warned me to read the trajectory, not the bullet. Gunfire shattered the air as screams erupted across the training grounds. A bullet splintered a recruit's skull, spraying the pavement with crimson. He collapsed, wailing in agony as his lifeblood pooled in the dirt. He was cut immediately. Medics dragged him away while I watched the failure rate skyrocket. No wonder most people never make the cut. It's brutal, but the monsters outside are far more lethal than any training simulation. I stared at the gore, imagining the carnage a real beast would unleash. Another failure followed. A coward fled the zone to dodge lead, earning the proctor's absolute contempt. He snarled that we were spineless compared to the veterans testing next door. The rejected shuffled away, their spirits crushed by their own weakness. The pressure is crushing, so I don't blame them, though I'm just an observer here. Then, someone worth watching stepped up. Private Son Unio, the blue-haired legacy brat, sauntered out and popped her knuckles. She was ready. The guns roared, and every eye locked onto her. The crowd was anxious, but she was leagues beyond any of them. She danced through the hail of lead like she was bending reality itself. A blur of motion spinning and leaping through the mechanical onslaught. At 57 seconds, even the stone-faced instructor started to applaud. 60 seconds passed without a single bullet grazing her skin. She walked off with a perfect score. As she passed, she ignored the gawking crowd but burned me with a venomous glare. I met her gaze, wondering why she had it out for me. The observers whispered, convinced there was some secret romance between us. She lingered, her eyes boring into mine, leaving me to guess her game. The proctor barked my name, forcing me to finally face the fire. I turned from her and marched straight into the kill zone. She kept watching as she walked away. The tension was becoming suffocating. I caught her reflection. That unblinking stare was starting to get unsettling. Enough games. I stood ready, still wondering what her problem was. Does she want praise? We're complete strangers. The hammer clicked and a round shrieked toward me like a falling star. I tilted my head, letting it whistle past. The speed was almost laughable. She sees me as a rival, but I'm on a different plane of existence. It was time to show her the true gap between us. I kept my hands buried in my pockets as the turret unleashed hell. I didn't dash. I just shifted my weight, letting the lead miss by millimeters. No jumping or theatrics, just a calm, rhythmic dance with death. I didn't just stand there. I started walking toward the muzzle. I closed the distance until the flashes blinded me, then flashed her a mocking grin. Her smug composure vanished instantly. I dodged the storm while laughing, watching her confidence crumble into dust. The instructor stood paralyzed, his stopwatch forgotten as he watched the impossible. 70 seconds later, he finally called a halt to the metal storm. I walked away with a perfect score and a target on my back. I stood inches from the cold barrel as it clicked empty. I definitely made my point. If the girls weren't swooning, they were definitely terrified. The proctor was left completely speechless. He just moved to the next name, ignoring me. The agility trial ended as the heat peaked. After a quick breather, we all gathered before a massive, shimmering blue gateway. The supervisor gave us a nod, acknowledging our decent performance on the agility course. Wiping sweat from his forehead, he announced the stamina trial, the final, and supposedly easiest, hurdle. We stepped through the sapphire portal, entering the heart of the dungeon. It was time to trek through the shifting, hollow labyrinth. The objective was simple. We had to sprint through the empty, ever-changing corridors of the dungeon. We had 40 minutes to reach the examiner, get a hand stamp, and haul ass back. Naturally, they kept the total distance a secret to keep us guessing. We had no clue how far the turnaround was. It was a pure psychological grind. I fell into step with the others, wondering if everyone was just pacing themselves. Trudging along was killing me. I was bored out of my mind at this snail's pace. Walking isn't my style. Suddenly, a sharp shoulder check caught me completely off guard. That high-born girl with the sapphire hair shot past, her eyes burning into mine. I didn't need to ask what she wanted. This was a direct challenge. She hammered the throttle, and everyone else followed like sheep. The march became a race. It made sense, though. 40 minutes doesn't go far when you're running blind. My pulse quickened. I live for this kind of petty provocation. The blue-haired girl took off like a shot, looking back to see if I'd fold. I let out a sharp laugh. The gauntlet was down and the game was finally on. I wasn't losing this. I kicked into a gear no human soldier should have. I broke from the pack. I blew past the competition, leaving them blinking in my dust. They couldn't even compete. They shouted for me to wait, but I only had eyes for that blue-haired girl. The terrain turned jagged, and a thick fog swallowed what little light we had. But she wasn't slowing down. She was as hungry for the win as I was. Suddenly, she felt a presence, a shadow looming right on her heels. It was me, wearing a grin. I told her this was barely a warm-up. She looked baffled, asking what I meant, so I just told her I was thinking aloud. I exploded past her, leaving her stunned and eating my fog. I laughed as I took point. I couldn't help showing off as she froze in shock. She stood there gasping, probably wondering what kind of monster she'd just encountered. Her mind drifted back to the moment she walked out of the commander's office. A swarm of reporters had been waiting for her the first glimpse into Sun Yunio's past. We were finally seeing her secrets. She looked paralyzed by all the sudden attention. They hounded her about the meeting, desperate for any scrap of inside info. They asked if the rumors were true. Was she really the general's high-stat daughter? The weight of those expectations looked crushing. She pushed through the crowd, escaping. She heard the whispers behind her nepotism higher, though some noted she seemed surprisingly grounded. They didn't know the first thing about her real life. She ignored the bets on her being the top recruit and shed her outer jacket. She couldn't stop thinking about how I'd pulverized that redstone with a single blow. I'd rattled her. Then, the scene shifted back to the training center's victory announcement. So, what was the payoff? Let's find out. High on the catwalk, Sun waved the blue flag, sweat-drenched but wearing a triumphant grin. She climbed down, ready to soak in the cheers of her squad. The speakers roared. White team seized the flag, shattering the record at 3 minutes and 34 seconds. The winners got 10 minutes of peace while the instructor summoned the blue team. New facility record, ladies, she announced. Rest up while you can. Success tasted sweet. The squad celebrated while they caught their breath. They praised their star, knowing she'd carry the weight while they coasted. When they cheered for Sun Yunio, a deep blush crept across her face. She wasn't one for compliments, but a small smile finally broke through. Later, the locker room was a blur of tired women decompressing. Some changed, others read or folded gear. Most were lost in their phones. Suddenly, the door slammed open as a blonde girl burst inside. She gasped out the news. Their morning record was already history. She looked terrified. The new time was a staggering 1 minute and 2 seconds. Stunned silence. The culprit? Our very own ace, Kim Yoon. Sun's heart skipped. She remembered him, the one who'd crushed her before without trying. Under the hot showers, the squad tried to wash away the defeat. But Yoon was everywhere. His perfect scores and constant wins were driving Sun insane. That blonde wouldn't stop rambling about him during every single drill. Finally, Sun had reached her absolute limit. Even at midnight, the whispers persisted about him slaying monsters in the abyss. "Shut up and sleep," Sun barked, but the girl just kept going. She was in a trance, obsessed with his legend, while Sun just wanted silence. Eventually, exhaustion pulled Sun into a dream of her own ghosts. A massive figure sat in the shadows, tying combat boots with scarred soldier hands. He was a man defined by war. Then, a small girl stepped forward. It was Sun as a child, looking up at her father, the veteran hunter. In that colorless dream, she stood before him in a void of white. He was the only warmth in her world. His smile was her everything. He gave her a rough pat on the head, a quiet fatherly blessing. As he walked away, she watched him with a desperate, silent ache. Right then, her future solidified. She knew her purpose. She'd be strong like him, a shield and a legend in the Hunter Corps. Cut to the commander's office, where he praised her month of flawless performance. He called her in to discuss a vital decision regarding her career. She thanked him, her eyes sharp and focused on the next step. "With your scores, you pick the division," he said. "The choice is yours." It was like standing in a high-end cellar, but the bottles were elite units. She just had to pick her poison. He waited, wondering if she'd follow her father's shadow or her own path. She uttered one name, Kim Myun. The commander's jaw practically dropped. He couldn't grasp the logic, so she spelled it out for him. She asked where Myun was heading, because that was her target. Now, back to reality. Sun Yunio is sprinting, her boots thudding through the thick, muddy sludge. I didn't enlist just to play ego games with these other rookies. My own bitterness had turned this into a game I was clearly losing. In my head, he was the ghost I could never quite catch. I'd failed every metric, from raw power to basic agility tests. Envy had blinded me. I vowed to swallow my pride and apologize. My goal was simple, get strong. Titles didn't mean a thing to me. I needed to escape my father's shadow, not make new enemies here. He was a prodigy. I should have been learning, not loathing him. It was time to grow up as I reached the final checkpoint. Myun was already there, ignoring the officials' frantic orders to move on. He stayed there purely to gloat and ensure I watched him win. As he sprinted past me on his way back to the start, he called me a sleeping snail, and my blood instantly turned to ice. Rage took over. I screamed for my stamp, ready to kill him. The apology was dead. I wanted blood and nothing else right then. His face was a target I wanted to put a fist through. We finished broken and breathless, but he acted like it was a joke. This brutal hell was just another Tuesday for a guy like him. Myun took first at 29 minutes. I took second at 32 minutes. The judge praised his perfect scores, calling him the new gold standard. He just nodded, acting like the whole world was his stage. A victory meal awaited us before the real violence started again later. 100 tired voices barked out a desperate, unified acknowledgement. We were ready to drop, but pride kept us standing tall. I grabbed my gear for lunch, catching his smug eyes for 1 second. He stuck his tongue out like a brat. My anger suddenly evaporated. I felt pathetic, not pissed. Then a familiar friend stepped in. Dongjun told him he was being a jerk while I watched silently. I laughed then. I'd been the one playing into his stupid games. I'd lost the race and my dignity. I had nothing left. I looked at the sky and felt the cold wind bite. It felt like a baptism, washing the sweat and shame away completely. I fixed my cap, bracing for the next round of military misery. I followed the pack toward the mess hall, starving for more action. Lunch was a blur before the live combat trials began at noon. A heavy club slammed into the dirt, signaling the first blood drawn. A pack of goblins swarmed a single desperate fighter in the pit. He'd already dropped one, but the others were screaming for more blood. One beast cackled, twitching with a frantic, nervous energy before lunging. Thick, black blood soaked the earth like a spreading oil slick. Leiden wiped the sweat away, staring down the foul green monsters. He tracked their eyes, waiting for one single fatal mistake from them. A blue runt lunged, but his blade was already waiting there. Then came the pincer. They were much smarter than they looked. He was about to be gutted if he didn't move right now. I locked eyes with the Azure freak, my next move already etched in my mind. My steel caught his club mid-swing, stopping that hunk of wood from painting the floor with my brains. I buried my boot in his ribs, a solid kick that sent the monster spiraling into the distance. Behind me, the green goblin slunk closer, but I was already dialed in, ready for his cheap shot. I slipped past the crushing blow by an inch, barely keeping my skull intact as the air whistled past. My blade tore through his chest, a jagged red fountain erupting as I carved the beast wide open. Somehow, the vile parasite still managed to find his footing. It stung. My kill shot failed, and now the creature was purely, blindingly livid. His eyes flared crimson, his mangled torso weeping a steady trail of dark blood. They regrouped, ready to swarm. Up in the stands, my mentor watched the carnage unfold with cold eyes. He watched from the high balcony. It was the safe zone, where the elite judged us without getting their hands dirty. This was stage 2, the specialty weapons trial. It was simpler than I feared, just prove we could actually use the gear they gave us. Raw power didn't matter. This was all about showing off the textbook fundamentals. Follow the book, get the badge. Naturally, most recruits clung to their trusty swords. While I aced it, my partner, Lee, was also crushing his performance down in the pit. The proctor gave him a nod of approval, clearly impressed by the kid's grit. But a shadow hung over the room. The real fight was only just beginning. As Dongjun faltered, I realized my worst fears for him were coming true. I knew he'd choke. Real combat had always been his Achilles heel. The monsters closed in for the final test, the infamous gauntlet. For a first class, the stakes changed. He had 3 goblins to kill. With one clean swipe, he halved the green one. One blue devil left. Should have been an easy cleanup for a guy like him. Blood sprayed as the blue one collapsed, its final rattling breath escaping into the dirt. Dongjun stood over the dying beast, blade poised to deliver the mercy blow. He drove the steel home, piercing through meat and bone to stop its heart forever. The clock stopped at 7 minutes and 52 seconds. It wasn't a winning time. They just waved him back to the bench in silence. My friend looked crushed, gasping for air and soaked in the sweat of failure. He walked off with his head low, knowing he'd bombed it. I kept watching. He'd had a dozen openings, but he hesitated every single time. He stayed on the defensive, letting the fear paralyze his killer instinct. I wondered if he simply didn't trust his own hands anymore. He walked through the gates, the weight of disappointment dragging his shoulders down. He felt like a letdown, shuffling past me without even meeting my eyes. Now, it was my turn. I was making corporal today, no matter what. I had the drive to win, and I'd drag him up with me. The crowd froze at my choice. Even the rich kid prodigy, Sun, looked like he'd seen a ghost. It was a black baseball bat, bristling with rusted, jagged nails. That was my weapon. I was taking a nail bat to a sword fight. The proctor was baffled, clearly thinking I'd just signed my own death warrant. Still, I let out a sharp grin. I already possessed the one secret this trial demanded. When the gates screeched and 3 goblins lunged, I didn't flinch. I just needed one heavy, bone-crushing impact. They charged instantly, led by a massive brute that shook the dirt with every thundering stride. The green runts scrambled in my direction, leaping through the air like rabid primates. I just stood my ground, cold and indifferent, gripping the wood until the veins in my hands throbbed. In my mind, those monsters were nothing more than fragile rabbits waiting for the hawk to strike. I wound up with agonizing, taunting slowness, timing my swing perfectly as they finally reached my strike zone. The arc of the bat was a blur of pure violence, meeting their horrific, blood-hungry faces mid-air. They had murder in their hearts and iron in their hands, but one clean sweep made them vanish, like a predator leaving nothing behind but a single, drifting feather as proof of its lethality. It took me exactly 4 seconds to finish a task that would have cost anyone else 10 minutes. Those creatures were pulverized into unrecognizable scraps of meat scattered across the arena floor. The proctors were absolutely floored. I hadn't just passed the test. I had completely erased the targets. Cheers erupted from the crowd, though the head examiner and Sun Yunio looked genuinely disturbed by my power. I scanned the spectators until my eyes locked onto her specifically. She searched my face, trying to comprehend the violence, but I just gave her a wide, unsettling grin. I stood there with my arms raised high, knowing I was the most dangerous man to ever set foot here. While the others cheered, Sun Yunio was left wondering if she was looking at a hero or a psychopath. Night fell as the trials wrapped up, and we all gathered by the idling buses in the lot. The lead proctor gave a standard speech, commending the survivors on a job well done. He singled me out for my performance, and I almost identified as a private before remembering my promotion. The official let out a hearty laugh and slapped me on the back with genuine respect. He joked that I was climbing the ladder so fast I'd forgotten where I stood. He admitted he'd been worried, since I was the only one from my unit to actually make the cut. But the battalion commander was reportedly over the moon with the results I'd turned in. The guys crowded around me, relieved I'd passed. If I'd failed, our whole squad would have been bullied mercilessly. They begged me not to pick on them once I hit sergeant, riding a wave of nervous laughter. My career was moving at light speed, but as I boarded the bus, I spotted my buddy nearby. Dongjun looked devastated by his own failure, so I reached out and gave his shoulder a supportive squeeze. He seemed a little rattled by the gesture, but relieved that my new rank hadn't changed me yet. Little did he know, I already had a much more grueling training regimen planned for him. Inside the bus, the air turned thick and awkward as the other hunters stared at me in silence. It wasn't random. Sun Yunio had finally swallowed her pride and moved toward me to apologize. She stood there, looking lost as I boarded. I noticed the private first-class insignia on her jacket. She'd advanced too, no surprise there, considering she was the only one who even came close to me. Her combat stats during the monster trials had been truly exceptional. She was the only real competition I had, so her promotion was a given. I didn't have time to chat. I climbed onto the bus and took my window seat without a single word. The sunset was beautiful, but there was a far more interesting view down on the pavement. Sun Yunio was still standing there, looking like a confused kid who'd lost her way. I watched her internal struggle as she tried to find the words to make things right. But before she could get a syllable out, her face went pale with pure terror. I had my face mashed flat against the cold glass of the bus window like a lunatic. I tapped the pane and mouthed the words clearly, "Cross me again, and you're dead." I wasn't literal, but the look in her eyes told me she knew exactly what I was capable of. The engine roared, and the coach vanished into the dying embers of the twilight. I watched her silhouette shrink as the grit and exhaust swallowed our trail. Looking back at Myun, she finally recognized the cold edge of a true lunatic. We hauled out, leaving Sun Yunio behind just as I had been commanded. The tires found their rhythm as we hit the fast lane of the dark interstate. I felt the tension rising before the first voice even broke the silence. The guys crowded me, desperate to know why she'd been burning holes through me. I figured the blunt truth was the only way to kill their nagging curiosity. I told them I'd crushed her spirit during the trials just to prove a point. A heavy silence dropped over the group as they processed that sheer brutality. They erupted, swearing the fire in her eyes was infatuation, not pure hatred. They closed in like a pack of hungry wolves, scenting fresh blood. They were furious. I'd ignored the crown jewel of the 104th Division. To them, she was the ultimate prize. My total lack of interest was a crime. I told them she didn't move the needle for me, which only fueled their anger. When they pushed for a name, I gave them my digital ghost, Lumi. They looked lost, demanding to know who the hell this mystery woman actually was. I saw her then, the pixelated goddess from the world of Dungeon Power Fighter. Her beauty was unmatched, yet these fools didn't even recognize her face. Their expressions soured the moment they realized I was talking about a game. They knew the name, but they couldn't fathom my obsession with a digital dream. It was a dead-end talk. We were heading back to a world without women. The iron gates of the training center finally groaned shut behind us. The scent of grease hit first a graveyard of picked clean chicken wing bones. My stomach twisted, reminding me I hadn't eaten since this long day began. The barracks were alive with the rowdy joy of a hard-won victory. Just as the plates emptied, the lieutenant marched in with a fresh mountain of food. He gave us the green light to gorge ourselves like kings for the night. Red in his shadow-traded looks, stunned by the old man's sudden kindness. The kid shot me a thumb, convinced this windfall was my doing alone. Red stared at my 3 stars with a mix of raw envy and shock. He predicted my promotion to sergeant, but I stayed silent and kept drinking. I was washing down the grease with Pepsi when the door swung wide open. Leo arrived, hauling a massive crate of beer, calling the second squad to the lounge. My guys scrambled for the drinks while the rest of the room watched in envy. Leunho laughed, saying the higher-ups treated my report like a gift from heaven. He'd put my perfect advancement score front and center for the brass to see. Red and his lackey watched that crate of beer like men dying of thirst. In a dry camp like this, a cold drink is the ultimate currency. Leunho barked at the idiots to beat it. These drinks were earned, not given. They slunk away, cursing our names and wishing we'd choke on every drop. Red's face was a mask of pure, boiling resentment as he exited. He figured the captain had scouted my prowess long before I arrived here. Either way, he was going to bed sober while we celebrated our luck. Outside, a blood-white moon lit the concrete maze of the entire headquarters. I crept toward the building's dark rear corner, scanning the shadows to ensure no witnesses were lurking nearby. I cleared my dry throat, mentally bracing myself for the secret ritual. "Rise!" I whispered, pulling a swirl of obsidian mist from my palm. The familiar silhouette materialized from the gloom as I held my hand high. There he stood. The little creature looked surprisingly harmless. He resembled a plush toy come to life. I locked eyes with him and asked how he felt. The tiny familiar seemed thrilled to be summoned, immediately getting distracted by a moth in the darkness. His non-threatening appearance worried me at first, but I had devised a clever way to utilize his charm. I didn't need a cold-blooded killer tonight. I had an entirely different objective for this little spy. I whispered that he'd be working as an undercover operative, haunting the shadows to gather sensitive intelligence. The critter barely acknowledged me. Even with my direct orders, he was far too busy chasing that moth around. A sharp, irritated shout shattered the quiet. My head whipped around while my little companion nearly jumped out of his skin. I hissed, "Listen, Tiny, stop messing around and tail anyone with high clearance. Move it, now." I needed him to sniff out any whispers of strange occurrences, specifically anything reeking of forbidden sorcery. Tiny held out a palm, seemingly demanding a down payment for his service. Realizing he just needed a boost to get going, I conjured a swirling ball of dark energy in my palm. Stepping closer to my little spy, I passed him the concentrated orb of shadow. He snatched it greedily and bolted into the night, disappearing before I could even blink a second time. I mouthed a silent warning for him to stay low and be careful. Watching him vanish, my stomach did somersaults. One slip-up and my entire double life would come crashing down. If he got caught, the whole base would lock down into a frantic, high-level security state of emergency. Panic surged when Sergeant Lianho stepped from the gloom, demanding to know what business I had skulking in the dark. I stood paralyzed for a heartbeat, scrambling to concoct a lie convincing enough to satisfy the old man. Turning slowly, I sheepishly claimed I'd overindulged and needed to walk off the effects of the celebration. I blamed the cheap beer for my dizzy head. Lee chuckled, asking if I was just a lightweight. I played along. Though dark mages are biologically immune to intoxication, we're simply wired differently than your average human. Alcohol, toxins, or even the deadliest plagues have zero effect on my system. My mana immediately purges any substance the moment it hits my bloodstream, keeping my head perfectly clear. Sergeant Lee offered a nod of respect for my promotion, and I thanked him politely. He warned me not to let the new rank go to my head, urging me to keep pushing my limits. I nodded solemnly, promising to uphold the standard. Lianho finally turned to leave, letting me have my space. But he tossed a final reminder about my supposed low tolerance. He told me not to dawdle because the guys were about to finish off the rest of the keg. I let out a jagged breath as his footsteps faded into the distance. I had to be perfect. One mistake, one suspicious glance, and the masquerade would be over forever. The more I dealt with Lee, the more his straight-laced nature became apparent, though that didn't really bother me. I never cared for personality types. I just needed to stay off everyone's radar. Above us, the moon hung cold and bright, illuminating my dangerous secret. By dawn, the heavy hitters at headquarters were locked in a serious meeting. The captain and the commander sat in silence. They stared at my scores, realizing I wasn't just a soldier, I was a complete statistical anomaly. The commander nearly scrapped the whole batch of recruits, but my perfect score made it impossible to ignore us. The captain noted that I had shattered the previous combat record, finishing the monster trial in 4 seconds. It confirmed all the hype the training instructors had been spewing about my natural talent. He finally saw the truth. I hadn't just met their standards, I had rewritten the entire manual for the Corps. The commander reminded him that I was the one who cleared the bat infestation at the fuel depot. The captain nodded. He remembered how I was the first one through the breach. I was the only one with the guts to move instantly. The chief was floored by my talent and that lightning-fast promotion. He knew I'd be a god-tier asset in no time flat. But a shadow remained. The elite units would soon start hunting me. The captain doubted I could handle that level of heavy lifting. At that point, the old man trusted me implicitly. He'd seen plenty of pros, but only the real killers became legends. A new icon was born, and the boss expected it to be me. The world bled into a desert haze of dust and jagged stone. Clad in tactical armor, I crunched through the shifting sands. Scaled freaks crawled from the left, while stone giants rose from the right. I was trapped between swarms of orcs and nasty little goblins. They howled to break my spirit, but I just tightened my grip. Every monster in the wasteland surrounded me, and I just grinned. I thudded my spiked bat against my skull, welcoming the whole crowd. I snapped back to reality, chugging a grape soda to kill the pain. My reflection looked like a total wreck after last night's bender. Meanwhile, I felt completely recharged, like I hadn't slept a wink. My buddies were drowning in nausea while I felt like $1,000,000. My exhausted friend, barely awake, asked if I was even human. He called me a monster because I hadn't even broken a sweat. Sergeant Lee walked in looking sharp, a towel draped over his neck. He was drenched in sweat but looked completely revitalized. He'd literally sweated the poison out. He looked like a true warrior. No distractions now. I had to stay focused on the mission ahead. Sarge asked about the gym, but I hadn't explored the base yet. As a corporal, the facility was mine, and I gave a sharp salute. He stopped at the door, catching one last thought. He mentioned the squad's VR rig was incredible, which spiked my pulse. That digital void was about to become my new home. I raced to Gym 2, desperate to taste that legendary simulation. I stood at the threshold, ready to leave the world behind. Adrenaline surged as I reached for the cold metal handle. Stepping inside felt like walking into a high-tech dream. The hyperrealism was disorienting, making my own reality feel like a cheap imitation. I hit the console, searching for a way to override the settings. I skipped the weaklings and locked my sights on the orcs. I wanted a real challenge, so I dialed the count way up. A dark, hungry smile stretched across my face. I hammered the button, adding more and more enemies to the slaughter. It capped at 30, which was a total joke to me. I wanted to slay hundreds at once, like an unstoppable god. It was time to pick my steel and start the bloodbath. Everything was set, my heart hammered with a dark anticipation. I slid the visor down, and the real world just faded away. I stood in the sterile VR chamber as the walls dissolved, surrendering to a desolate, sun-bleached wasteland. Clad in heavy tactical plate, I gripped a baseball bat spiked with rusted, jagged nails. The realism was jarring. I spun around, eyes searching the horizon of this alien landscape. Then, the orcs manifested. The clock hit 0, and they charged, their roars shaking the earth. I didn't flinch. I tightened my grip on the wood, a hungry, manic grin spreading wide. Honestly, the sheer craftsmanship of this simulation was as terrifying as it was beautiful. As they swarmed, I swung, sending the first wave of monsters spiraling back into the dust. Every connection vibrated through my marrow, a primal, sickeningly satisfying crunch of bone and metal. I became a whirlwind of violence, shattering skulls and launching bodies into the air effortlessly. They kept spawning from the void, looking truly monstrous. I screamed, daring them to try me. Another head cracked like a melon. The body hit the dirt and flickered into nothingness. Silence finally fell. The last few shadows evaporated, leaving me alone in the digital heat. It ended too quickly. 30 kills? Pathetic. I felt cheated by the lack of a challenge. Then, a wicked idea took hold, and I knew I had to push the system further. I selected 30 goblins, 30 orcs, 30 stone golems, and 30 lizardmen to join the fray. I adjusted my visor, heart pounding. This wasn't training anymore. It was a full-blown slaughterhouse. A wall of monsters closed and massive stone golems on one side, snarling orcs on the other. Lizardmen and goblins filled the gaps. I stood centered, ready to drown in the beautiful chaos. 3, 2, 1. The lizards lunged first, followed by the heavy, rhythmic thud of charging orcs. Everyone attacked at once, a total suicide mission. I just smiled and introduced them all to Lucille. If you don't catch that reference, you're seriously missing out on some classic television. I launched myself into the pack, eyes wide with manic energy, calling them my little victims. My bat obliterated an orc's temple instantly. I pivoted, hammering a golem while blood sprayed the sand. The lizardmen fared no better. I smashed those elongated snouts into a messy, unrecognizable pulp. And the goblins? Don't even get me started. They were just fodder for the meat grinder. One goblin tried to pounce while I was finishing a golem, but I saw it coming. I caught it midair, a sickening crack echoing as I sent it straight to hell. The remaining horde froze, terrified by my sheer brutality. It took minutes to break them completely. Only one broken lizard remained, crawling away after a devastating blow shattered its entire jaw. Poor soul. When that final creature collapsed, the digital nightmare was officially over. I stood amidst a graveyard of cooling data, surrounded by the fallen monsters at my feet. Victory was effortless. I tapped the side of my helmet, signaling the system to terminate immediately. As the light faded and I pulled the gear off, I couldn't stop the adrenaline rush. Back in the real world, I exhaled, admitting that was the most intense experience ever. It was incredible, honestly. The only thing that could rival the rush of Dungeon Power Fighter. Suddenly, a HUD notification flickered, basic blunt weaponry skill unlocked. I stared at it, stunned. My mastery levels were climbing. Was it really this easy to level up in reality? It was a massive win. I never expected to farm actual skills from a simple simulation. This changed everything. I didn't need dangerous dungeons to get stronger for my family anymore. I could just use the gym. Leaving the room, I planned my next session with a blade. Then, I spotted a figure hurrying toward me down the hall, looking completely panicked. It was Dongjun, his face pale and eyes wide with pure anxiety. "What's wrong?" I asked. The private was trembling, pointing a shaky finger at the digital scoreboard by the exit door. I looked over, and my heart sank. Every single kill from my impossible run was displayed. The secret was out. By tomorrow, every single person here would know exactly what I am. The silence was deafening. "Did you really kill them all?" he whispered. I hesitated. Then it hit me, a chance to wipe my record and cure his cowardice. I fixed him with my coldest, most authoritative stare. "Jim, now, we're talking," I barked. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't offer a word of comfort, just a cold, dismissive shrug. "Seek." I flashed a look of pure, unadulterated terror. "You're training until you drop." I shoved him inside despite his hungover pleas. "Sweat it out," I growled. The door slammed shut, sealing his fate. Outside, another soldier drifted by. He stopped at the board. 120 monsters slaughtered in one go. Corporal almost had a heart attack right there in the hallway. Years of hunting, and he'd never seen such carnage. This would spread fast. Through the falling snow, Corporal Kim walked out looking like a haunted man. He looked like he'd just seen a god bleed, or worse, smile. Back at the barracks, the usual pack of losers was loitering around. A low-level private snapped to attention the moment the corporal walked in. "Where's the squad?" "Snow clearing." "And Kim Jun?" I asked sharply. "The gym, sir. He's staying there until the official drills start." The kid slipped, calling me corporal right in front of the unit bully. He braced for a beating, his eyes squeezed shut in terrified anticipation. But I was done with petty games. "Find him. Command wants him now." The private vanished before I could change my mind and get violent. I turned to the remaining slackers huddled in the corner of the room. They were doing what soldiers do, betting their lives on something stupid. "Hey, Corporal, you want a piece of this action?" they asked. A month's pay was on the line over when Kim Jun would rank up. I scanned the sheet. These idiots would bet on the sun rising. Ponytail actually put his money on a 6-month window for promotion. Purple Hair started howling, laughing at the sheer insanity of that gamble. He's a freak of nature, Ponytail argued. Common rules don't apply to him. I stared at the paper, weighing the reality of what I was. While they bickered, I grabbed the pen and made my own move. I slapped the pen down. Ponytail's eyes nearly bulged out of his head. 1 month? Are you high? You can't take back a bet this big. He kept screaming that I was throwing my entire paycheck into a fire, but Corporal simply didn't give a damn. I walked out without a word. He's crazier than I am, Ponytail whispered. The bet was locked in. Sergeant, within 30 days, a suicide mission. At the gym, the redstone dumbbells glowed like embers on the rack. Massive bars sat heavy, waiting to crush anyone who lacked the nerve. A sign warned, no redstone lifting solo. You'll die without a spotter. Yet there I was, squatting the heaviest bar with zero backup. I didn't need a spotter. I needed a challenge. As I rose, my shirt strained against muscles built for a war. The anatomy was almost inhuman. I was a weapon made of meat. My arms were massive. I dropped the weights and watched my power grow. Even though the high-tech gear is packing en masse, I have been grinding these weights daily. But my actual progress is still moving at a snail's pace. I cannot stop dreaming of Guard, where my god-tier skills were just a thought away. I could boost my power just by tweaking stats. With those cheats here, I would be a legend. For now, I'm stuck grinding through these pathetic, incremental gains. Then, a digital notification flashes, and I spot something that changes the entire game. A new power skill just activated, instantly jacking my strength up by 5 points. It looks like basic garbage, but I will take any new edge I can eventually level up. Just then, a low-ranking messenger knocks to drag me back to the real world. He offers a stiff salute, stammering that the commander wants me in his office right now. Still buzzing from the level up, I turn toward him with a wild, manic look in my eyes. I thank him and agree, leaving the poor kid totally baffled by my weird-as-hell facial expression. As I dress, he is likely wondering if the entire base has finally lost its mind. Minutes later, I am standing at the heavy doors of the main administrative building. I step inside, snap a salute, and report in just as the boss requested. The platoon commander practically beams at me. He was clearly looking forward to this meeting. He stands up and waves off the formalities, saying it is nothing too heavy. He suggests we finish our chat in the privacy of the counseling room. Heading that way, he asks how my first week as a corporal has been treating me. I tell him it is great and congratulate him on his own recent promotion as well. That earns a massive grin. The guy is clearly riding a high from the news. He credits me, claiming my work with that bat swarm incident made the promotion possible. We sit, and he thanks me again. I just stay humble, saying I was doing my job. He slides a thick folder across the desk, revealing the real reason he called me in. He starts explaining the contents. This came from the battalion commander himself to recognize my recent field achievements. Between the Bat Massacre and my perfect exam scores, the top brass was definitely paying attention. I open the file to find a shimmering award for elite excellence waiting for me. He apologizes for the casual handoff, but swears this medal is a massive career milestone. My heart skips. If I can keep racking up these wins, the possibilities are endless. I ask, eyes wide, if these merits can buy me even more special privileges. He looks stumped, explaining that almost no one earns these rewards so early in their service. Getting multiple awards of excellence is basically unheard of in this unit, but that does not stop my obsessive drive for a second. I ask if 10 of these would let me skip the next promotion cycle entirely. My mind is already racing with fantasies of more time to play my favorite games. He just sits there, probably wondering if I think these medals are just cheap Amazon discount codes. Days later, we are gathered at an underpass where a dungeon gate has ripped open. The commander announces that our platoon is the one tasked with the breach. I see familiar faces as he promises a safe return if we stick to training. He is confident every one of us will walk out without a single scratch. He reviews the dungeon type while the sergeant drops a heavy crate of supplies. Every soldier in the squad makes a face of absolute, soul-crushing disgust as they see the supplies, and for a damn good reason. I watched the commander yank a respirator from the crate, the rubber snapping against his palm as he named the pit where our sanity would go to die. To the top brass, it is a tactical zone. To us, it is just the city's literal colon. We plunged in, the sludge heavy and chemical, dragging at our boots like a bad habit we could not shake. In the rear, June and Ponytail were already gagging, their complaints echoing my own silent prayer for one breath of clean air. Sergeant Lee pushed forward, carving a path through the rot while the rest of us trailed like ghosts in his wake. Let me paint a picture of this hellhole for you. High Command labels these tunnels as a low-threat zone, a designation clearly dreamed up by someone sitting in a sanitized office. They forgot to mention the 200-plus vermin waiting to tear us apart in the dark. Between the tight stone walls and the volatile air, our rifles were useless, turning this into a knife fight in a phone booth. Lee's fist went up, a silent command that froze the blood in my veins as we neared the kill zone. The word rippled back through the ranks, a cold reminder that one slip-up meant never seeing the sun again. We spilled out into a hollowed-out cavern, a momentary reprieve from the suffocating grip of the pipes. Lee scanned the two yawning mouths of the cave, plotting to turn this intersection into a mass grave for the swarm. We had crawled in through the western vein, leaving only the eastern throat for the devils to pour through. The old man gave the nod, signaling the boys to start prepping the dinner bell for our uninvited guests. A shadow moved through our ranks, hauling a heavy box that smelled like the very essence of decay. One of the new kids dropped the crate, its contents sweating a stench so foul it nearly brought Ponytail to his knees. I did not judge him. My own stomach was doing backflips against my ribs. The air was thick enough to chew, a cocktail of ancient filth and fresh rot. Our masks filtered the worst of it, but they also narrowed our world, stealing the peripheral vision we desperately needed. As the commander pried the lid, an oily, dark energy seemed to spill out, curdling the very air. It was a fermented banana, reeking worse than a locker room after a doubleheader in the middle of July. The sight was so grotesque, it felt like nature itself was trying to blur the image from my mind. The guys recoiled, Ponytail swearing that even the rats deserved better than that biological weapon. He figured if that was their diet, it was no wonder their very breath could melt paint. On the commander's bark, we scrambled, scattering the foul fruit into every dark corner. That is when I saw it, the CO froze, his eyes locking onto something that did not belong in a safe zone. His boot crunched down, not on stone, but on a jagged, bleached pile of remains. He stumbled back, his face turning a shade of pale that told me everything was about to go sideways. It was not just a few scraps. The entire floor was a mosaic of skeletal debris. We came here to hunt the rats, but looking down, I realized something else had already finished the job. My realization was cut short by a scream from the flank. The tide was coming, and it was coming fast. The distant skittering turned into a roar, the sound of 1,000 claws on cold concrete. The commander snapped out of his trance, roaring for the shield wall to close the gap before we were overrun. Me braced the front line, shoulder to shoulder, while the commander directed the blades to find their marks. Even with death knocking, Ponytail and the others were still wagering on who would stack the most bodies. Some people are just hooked on the adrenaline, unable to see the cliff until they are already falling. Lee growled at them to focus, his voice cutting through the rising panic like a serrated blade. Ponytail just grinned, asking the Sarge if he wanted a piece of the action. For a second, Lee actually smirked. Sometimes a little stupidity is the only thing that keeps the fear at bay. I did not laugh. I just tightened my grip on my weapon, my world narrowing down to the next 10 seconds. The bait worked too well. A living wave of gray fur and teeth erupted from the darkness. "Hold the line!" the commander screamed, his sword catching the dim light as the first wave hit. Nobody moves, nobody runs. We stand our ground or we die in the muck. As the first beast lunged, claws out and eyes red, I felt that familiar, terrifying spark of life finally catch fire. Purple took a head, Ponytail shredded 3 more. Lee's a powerhouse, crushing skulls with iron. Mune's just watching, ranking us like chess. The second platoon's heavy hitters stepped up. Kim's hammer and Chotiwook's blades were blurs. Surprisingly, even the coward corporal was actually holding his own against many. Kim watched the bully get jumped by 3. He cracked skulls without even looking back. One swing, 3 heads, gone instantly. Still, some vermin slipped through our line. But our last defense was waiting. The commander and Sergeant Me handled outliers. As they stand, our shields are safe. Mune tracked everything while smashing his own. Rank matters, these guys move like true elites. Then I saw the man who shocks, Lee Dong-jun carving rats with cross strikes. Mune's been training him like a dog. That growth brought a real grim smile. I wasn't the only one watching him. Lee smiled. Dong-jun rushed to help others. Behind him, Purple and kept killing. The corporal paused after his kill. He stared at Mune, wanting that power. He flicked the blood and reset fast. Corpses piled, then everything went south. A fresh horde hit our rear shield. Commander barked, "Wave number 2 is here." He sent the 1st and 4th squads. "Back off, shields up, don't fight alone." 4th squad arrived, blades swinging through filth. We waded through a sea of dead. The guys relaxed, thinking it was over. But I saw Mune's face go cold. He sensed a dark chill in the air. Something demonic pulsed under the corporal feet. Suddenly, the ground began to heave. "Get back! Something huge is coming up!" The corporal looked down and knew he was... The floor exploded into stone and dust. The commander froze. It was a total nightmare. A mutated giant. A pure, irregular monster. 4 purple eyes glowing, fangs dripping hate. Those bones, this nightmare is what fed. It's gutting beasts to stay fed. Forget strategy. The captain's dead meat. That rodent is hunting, my friend. He wiped out when it breached. It's bearing fangs. He's cornered. Even the boss is frozen. He's catatonic. Help is too far. He just screams for him to run. Fear turned his legs to lead. Time's up. Those talons are falling. He thinks his life is over. He braces. Then, a blade flashes. That claw drops like a meteor. A savior parries but loses steel. It's Dongjin. He stepped in. He grabs him. The rookie's stunned. Run! Dongjin barks. No time left. The beast shrieks, absolutely livid. While they panicked, I moved. My turn. I launch toward it. It's fixated on him. I'm invisible. I wind up. I check eyes. Glazed, mindless, and void of fear. It's possessed by something dark. I smash its skull into dirt. They dive as the ground breaks. Through dust, I signal good. That's for Dongjin. He stayed frosty. He grins. He knows I've got this. They retreat. The squad is chaos. Just me and the freak now. It stands, snarling through blood. It vents a wave of malice. A violet shockwave rips the air. Ceiling falls. Rocks rain down everywhere. Perfect cover. Thanks for the privacy. It lunges, claws shredding the atmosphere. I'm faster. My eyes burn. I'm going loud. Nobody is watching. I'm a bullet. I snap its leg. I launch it back at Mach speed. Shield down. I'll finish this hand to hand. I rain down a storm of strikes. It can only scream as it dies. I stop. Done. The bastard's cold. My knuckles had turned the thing into a cratered mess. Its ears were shredded, and its jaw was a toothless ruin. I unclenched my hand, reaching out to siphoning the dark essence straight from the carcass. Shadows bled off the beast, coiling into my palm like a screaming obsidian sphere that set my veins on fire. As I drained the last drop of its life, that eerie violet shimmer in its eyes finally flickered out. A digital chime echoed in my mind. My corruption level had just ticked up one notch. The brass never guessed a bottom feeder like this held so much power. I grabbed my trusty bat, thanked the rat for the boost, then finished pulverizing what was left of it. The sewer run was finally over. We climbed back to the surface where the perimeter guards stood watch. The guys from the second platoon were slumped on the asphalt, just trying to breathe before the ride home. Violet Hair was already gloating, breathing down Ponytail's neck about their little wager. He kept demanding a concession. Honestly, there wasn't a single point left for the other guy to argue. Ponytail took the loss while I watched the commander barking into his radio, giving headquarters the play-by-play. He detailed the ambush by the freak mutant and confirmed every squad had made it out in one piece. He noted the threat was neutralized, glancing my way as he told them his own unit took it down. Right then, I was preoccupied with the rank stench on my gear, that gross curiosity you have after touching something foul. I regretted it immediately. The smell was absolutely sickening, just like I knew it would be. The boss was already being productive, calling in a heavy-duty cleanup crew to secure the entire zone. While I tried brushing the filth off my sleeves, a shadow fell over me, complaining about our luck. It was Ponytail. He dropped down beside me, offering a quiet thanks for keeping them all alive down there. He admitted the sight of that irregular bastard had completely paralyzed him with pure terror. I played it cool, telling him I was just doing what I was paid to do. I even apologized for going rogue, but he still had that look of horror in his eyes from the fight. He knew protocol didn't mean squat when we were staring death in the face like that. He thanked me again, knowing his friends would be dead if I hadn't stepped in when I did. Then his tone shifted. He looked me over, asking if I'd actually made it through without a scratch. I didn't waste words, just gave him a short, sharp nod to show I was fine. It felt okay to be seen, but then a second voice cut through the air with the same question. It was the commander this time. The cold look on his face told me he was definitely catching on. Even so, I kept a straight face and told him I was untouched, leaving Ponytail questioning if I was even human. The boss rubbed his temples with a heavy sigh, ordering me to his office the second we hit base. He's clearly got a million questions and absolutely zero answers he's going to like. I found the private meeting weird, but I just headed for the transport truck without putting up a fight. Ponytail whispered that the old man looked like he was about to blow a fuse. While he sat there stewing, Kim finished a call and reported that everyone else only had minor scrapes. Dongjun was cleared by the medics too, and was already en route back to the camp. The tension finally left the commander's face when he heard even the corporal only had a few bumps on his head and would be back on duty by tomorrow morning. He finally exhaled, and the sergeant first class gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Then he snapped to attention, roaring out the final orders for the entire unit to hear. He called off the raid for the day, citing the unexpected chaos we'd just survived. Everyone shouted their agreement and started packing up their gear for the retreat. Later, in the base office, I'm sitting across from the boss as he tells me this is about my report. He wants the play-by-play on how I killed that thing so he can pass the truth up the ladder. I grab the pen, staring at the blank page. Writing it down is hard. I smashed that beast with my hands after my shield failed. If I report that, Command won't buy it. The boss drops his 5-hour energy and looks at me. Shadows had blocked his view of the actual kill. He's dying to know the truth, so he asks me straight up. Sweating. He asks if I really killed it with my bare knuckles. My hands are bruised and shaking. I'm a terrible liar when caught red-handed. Instead of a fake story, I admit I just acted on pure instinct when my gear failed. He goes pale and demands to see my internal power stats. I show him a 65 in strength and 60 in speed. He nearly falls over. His own stats are only 40, and he's an elite officer. Yet a grunt like me is rocking numbers north of 60. He slumps back, realizing I'm twice as strong as any veteran sergeant. He sighs, wishing I'd gone to the elite hunter academy with these numbers. Then he looks at my face, remembering I'm a dropout. That mistake makes the academy a pipe dream. Still, he tries to be a good leader. He tells me to get my high school diploma to move up. He says being a sergeant unlocks the online study prep, but he can tell I'm not interested in books. I scratch my head, admitting that studying was never my thing. I'd rather rank up through blood and sweat. He laughs, finally relaxing. He leans back, promising not to force the school stuff. But the offer stands. He's just glad I'm staying in his squad. It's late. He says he'll write the report so I can go sleep. I thank him and turn toward the door. But he has one last thing to say. He looks at his officer's cap, feeling the weight of our rank gap. He stops me, admitting the whole platoon would be dead without me. He remembers the horror and how he was too frozen to move. He thanks me from the bottom of his heart. As my boss, he wanted to be the first to acknowledge my win. I smile and say, I just did my job. He beams at me. He's thrilled to have a reliable soldier like me. I walk out, knowing I didn't do it to save anyone. The truth? I just wanted the demonic energy and the points to rank up. My mood souring. I run into a familiar face. My old bully. We meet in the hall. He's still covered in bandages from the dungeon. He wants into my special training program. I'm annoyed, while he's sweating through his shirt in pure shame. He's desperate for my help, with Dongjun watching nervously. I start drilling him, asking how he even heard about my private sessions. Next, he leveled a finger directly at the man who used to terrorize him. He demanded to know why a broken wreck wanted to join them. The bully flashed back to that hellish sewer where Dongjin fought like a god. His gaze held a terrifying, unbreakable steel. He never flinched. While everyone else stood paralyzed by pure terror, he was the only soul brave enough to drag him from death's teeth. Taking it all in, the coward stammered that Dongjun's insane growth must be Minjun's doing. He tried to be real, but his ego was still fighting a losing battle. The pathetic guy cannot even hold eye contact while begging for a spot in the squad to get stronger. Just whispering the request is clearly draining every ounce of his remaining dignity. His heart seems right, but remember, Minjun might act nice, but he is a shark who smells blood. Right now, he is fighting a losing war against a massive, sadistic grin. You can practically see his shadow grow horns as he tells the corporal that entry isn't free. Sporting a nasty smirk, he drops the formalities and uses the guy's full name, Kim Guangshik. He explains there is a pecking order here. Guangshik knows what is coming, but the words are stuck. After a painful silence, the broken corporal chokes down his remaining pride to chase that power. He hits the floor, screaming his thanks for the rescue and begging forgiveness for his past sins. Our boy is absolutely loving every second of this public execution of dignity, but Dongjin is sweating buckets since he is the junior. The corporal finally drops the act, offering a gut-wrenching, honest apology. He swears he is dead serious about training, admitting he needs to make NCO to fix his life. Since Dongjun is a total softie, he looks at Minjun and says he is cool with the corporal joining the team. Minjun isn't feeling the brotherly love. He goes cold and silent, making Dongjin visibly twitchy. When he finally speaks, it is a death knell. He refuses to take him in, leaving them both stunned. Guangshik looks gutted, but he gets it. His past makes him toxic. He thanks them for the save and vows to disappear forever. He turns away, his spirit crushed and shoulders slumped in total defeat. He looks like a walking ghost. Suddenly, our hero offers him a lifeline, but it comes with a catch. The corporal snaps his head back, desperate to hear whatever condition Minjun is about to set. Honestly though, nobody expected the guy to demand he become a literal pigeon. The corporal just stares, his brain short-circuiting at the sheer absurdity of the demand. The confusion dies when our hero puts on a face like a bitter, meddling auntie and demands he act like a bird for 24 hours. Guangshik's blood starts to boil over at the sheer humiliation of it. Minjun makes it clear, no bird, no training. Boiling with rage, the corporal starts to pucker his lips. Every single vein in his forehead looks ready to burst. With twitching eyes and grinding teeth, he starts a low, pathetic coo, like a common street pigeon. Dongjin is floored by the lengths this man will go to for a shot at redemption. Behind him, Minjun is looking like a straight-up monster from a horror flick. Just look at that terrifying, wide-eyed grin. He isn't even hiding the malice anymore. Honestly, I can't tell if he is our savior or the final boss. We cut to a gorgeous night at a Gothic cathedral under the glow of 2 celestial moons. We are back in Izard. A massive, scarred warrior in a Spartan helm is pushing a creaking iron cart. Whatever is on that cart is hidden under a heavy shroud. He brings the load to a halt right in front of a woman draped in white. When she thanks him, we finally see her face. It is the Saintess, missing since the very first chapter. The warrior just looms over her, his battle-worn scars shimmering under the pale moonlight. She turns, waiting for him to speak his piece, but when the silence drags on, she finally asks if there is something he needs to say. I watched him challenge her timeline. Without a word, she spun around, closing the distance between them. She didn't stop, though. She brushed right past him, heading straight for the heavy cart he'd hauled in. The moonlight finally hit her face, revealing every sharp, cold detail. She looked like a goddess, pure, radiant, and possessed of that terrifying, magnetic grace. When she peeled back the tarp to inspect the cargo, we all leaned in, mesmerized by her effortless elegance. 2 glowing violet eyes glared from the shadows. The monster's low, guttural snarl vibrated through the air. She let the fabric fall, hiding the horror. A faint, satisfied sigh escaped her lips. The panicked soldier tried one last time to talk sense into her, begging for a change of heart. Silence fell. The holy lady raised her hand, palm out, and issued a silent, heavy command. A massive violet portal erupted on the floor, the same gateway that had spit Kim and June back home. It drank the very air around us. Then, she turned her icy gaze back to the warrior. She whispered that she was sending a little thank you to the man who abandoned them. Her next words made him flinch. This girl flips her mask faster than Mune ever could. With pure malice in her eyes, she declared that revenge justifies any level of burning rage. Now I get why our guy was constantly ambushed by freaks in every single pit. Lesson learned, never cross a woman. Meanwhile, back on Earth, some poor grunt is breaking his back. It's the sergeant from Second Squad, with that purple-haired kid working right beside him, fresh out of a death trap, and the army already has them building a new base by hand. When the boss finally keels over from exhaustion, the kid makes a pretty sharp point. He asks if these campsites actually do anything when a real monster shows up. Watching the other guys struggle, even the ginger sergeant starts to doubt the point of it all. At the end of the day, they're just grunts following orders they can't refuse. It's not their job to figure out if the plan actually makes any sense. A transport truck screeches to a halt right in front of them. The sergeant and the corporal just stare, horrified. Their faces say it all. They're about to get stuck with more grunt work. The truck is loaded with Stel. The second the squad sees it, a collective groan ripples through the ranks. These heavy blocks are everywhere. Sergeant Kim Mi starts tossing them down from the truck bed for the crew. Kim, June, and his apprentice are already sweating, lugging those massive cubes to the designated spots. And here comes the newest addition to our little group, looking like he has a lot to say. Corporal Guangshik is putting in the hours, though he's clearly itching to share some trivia. He's nearly buckling under the weight of just one block when he opens his mouth. He explains that Steli is army slang because nobody knows if it's made of stone or heavy metal. This plain-looking block is incredibly tough and dense. It's way heavier than it appears. That's exactly why the brass uses it for these fortified camps. He's about to dive into how they mine this stuff from deep within the dungeons. Then he spots our boy Menjun standing right next to him. Typical. The guy has 2 cubes balanced on his shoulders like they're made of light cardboard. Seeing that insane display of strength leaves the corporal speechless. He really should expect the impossible from Mune. He finally gets it. The sergeant stops trying to make sense of his friend. He just mumbles that he was trying to be helpful. The grueling grind rolls on as they haul more material to the site. Mune starts stacking 4 cubes at a time. It's shocking, sure, but we're used to his nonsense by now. Once the trailer is clear, Sergeant Kim calls for a 10-minute breather before they start the next round. As the exhausted crew collapses on the pavement, Kim walks over to talk to the commander. HQ's intel stunned the CO. A tin dungeon appeared nearby. Soldiers panicked. They swarmed Mage, terrified. Sergeants broke. Begged to skip. Ongoing investigation. Wanguk saw me. Lecture incoming. Laugh confirmed it. Unique criteria met. Massive, crowded zones. No bosses. Training ground. Army drills. Hunter field maneuvers. Talking to who? Living manual. Speaking for others. Curiosity. I'm interested. Desperation worries me. Miji snapped. Mandatory credit. Credit hooked me. Imagined medals. Happy. Achievement farm. Shadow watcher. I hissed. Stomped its face. Others distracted. It touched me. Intel flood. Executives argued. Major reported anomaly. Military territory. Major's rank. Scouts blacked out. Clear it now. Him. Ignored warning. Grunts only. Back to reality. Tiny looked innocent. I grind my heel into the wretch's chest, standing tall with a grin that promises nothing but darkness. I am taking tomorrow off, I mutter to the void. The sun is bleeding gold over a quiet suburban street when I finally wake up. I am shoving gear into a rucksack, prepping for a little detour into a place that should not exist. I slide into a plain hoodie, tossing my blood-stained hunter uniform into a crumpled paper bag on the floor. Zipping it shut, I scan the empty room one last time before heading out the door. My gaze lingers on a framed photo of my commander standing beside two elderly people. His parents, I assume. He seemed weirdly proud when I asked for leave, like he finally saw some humanity in me after that last transport job. "You are a rare breed," he told me with a heavy pat on the shoulder. I probably looked like a kid getting a gold star, nodding my thanks as my eyes lit up. It was not really a compliment. He was just spooked because my old place is in the red zone and I have nowhere to go. When he asked about my last break, I mumbled something about rotting away in a gaming cafe. He saw that coming a mile away and reached for his desk drawer to offer an alternative. He tossed me a brass key, telling me to use his family house and actually get some real sleep. His folks are out on business, so the house is a tomb of suburban quiet and completely vacant. I tried to say no, but the man has a way of making a refusal feel like an insult to his honor. With a tired sigh, he slid a scrap of paper across the desk with the address scribbled on it. It is a hike from the base, but a palace compared to a cramped internet stall in the city. Looking at the map, I realize it is right on the edge of the exclusion zone I am hunting. Perfect. He did not care if I actually slept there. He just wanted me to have the key and some fun. So, I took the offer, feeling like a thief who just got handed the vault combination. Back at headquarters, he is probably sinking into his leather chair, exhaling a massive cloud of stress. He is looking at my file again, the one that keeps him awake at night. It is a short read, entire bloodline missing, 0 records, a ghost in the system. A guy with my kind of power and no past is a ticking time bomb to someone like him. Yet, he is betting his career on a gut feeling that I am one of the good guys. I turn back to that family photo, the silence of the apartment ringing in my ears. I tug the hood over my eyes, wondering if I even remember the faces of my own kin. Time to move. I lock the door behind me and step into the cool morning air, ready for the hunt. The bus drops me at the edge of nowhere, and the rest of the journey is just boots on gravel. I run through the intel my summon brought back bits and pieces of a nightmare. There is a rip in reality inside a hollowed-out school building just ahead in this ghost town. High Command told everyone to keep a 1,000-meter radius, keeping the civilians in the dark. The military checkpoints appear on the horizon, soldiers gripping rifles with white knuckles. I am not here to sign a waiver, so I take to the rooftops. A shadow moving against the sky. A few silent leaps across the shingles and I am well past their perimeter and into the alleyway. I crouch behind a weathered utility pole, eyes locked on the prize, a shimmering, jagged tear in space. It is a graveyard. Everyone else was too smart or too scared to get this close. I pull my mask tight, wondering why my shadow summon bailed before we saw what was actually inside. That little shadow really needs a lesson in finishing what it started. I step toward the crackling portal, the sound of static filling my skull. I can always turn back. I lie to myself just as the system ping confirms my entry. The sun vanishes, replaced by a bruised sky and a graveyard of skeletal, dead trees. The air is thick, clinging to my skin like a wet shroud as I push deeper into the rot. I stop dead when something metallic glimmers through the ash and mud. A shattered blade lies in the dirt, the kind standard-issue hunters carry before they die. Crouching over the steel, I wondered if this soil had tasted war. Then, the air went cold. I sensed a lurker in the brush, so I called its bluff and dared it to move. I told the thing to quit stalling. Suddenly, a massive shape uncurled, looming over me like a nightmare. I breathed again. Just a shroud. I almost lost my cool over a rag. Then those eyes ignited a violet glow fueled by the same rot I had seen in every demon. The thing was a mountain of muscle. For one insane second, I thought it was a goblin. No, it was too huge. A kobold, maybe? Goblins never grew to be this heavy. Whatever it was, its sheer size defied nature, putting me on high alert. I stood up and squared off, wondering how the last crew ever made it out alive. In a heartbeat, the massive creature launched itself off the forest floor. It blurred through the air, claws dripping with dark energy. I slipped the strike just in time. Seizing the opening, I pivoted and threw a desperate punch straight at its head. My fist connected, detonating a shockwave of raw power that sent ripples through the trees. As the dust settled and the light faded, my heart dropped into my stomach. The beast was untouched. Worse, it was actually smiling at me like this was a game. It lunged to snap at my hand, but I shifted gears and moved faster than thought. I snapped a kick into its jaw, launching the massive monster 1 foot into the air. I landed like a cat, eyes glued to the target to see if I had drawn blood. It was fine. The damn thing had just absorbed the entire impact like it was nothing. This was easily the most solid wall of a monster I had ever tried to climb. It didn't stop. It just kept coming, swinging those claws with a reckless, frantic energy. I dodged again, but this time I was grinning. I had a little surprise waiting for it. The beast's leg began to sink into the very spot where I had just been standing. I triggered rank D corruption, turning the solid ground into a hungry pit of quicksand. This was my shot. The beast was stuck, and the window was finally wide open. I charged in at a lethal speed, raining a storm of blows down on its hideous face. Even while pummeling the life out of it, I felt a strange flicker of respect. The thing was a tank. It didn't even try to flinch or protect itself from me. As I threw a hook at its ribs, a strange blue light flickered in the shadows. It caught my hand. For the first time, the monster actually bothered to defend itself. As its counter swung toward my head, I saw something was glowing deep inside that troll. I got distracted by the shine and paid the price. A massive swipe sent me flying. I skidded and found my feet. The monster stayed put, letting out a low, guttural growl. My first hit since returning home. That bastard just shredded my favorite new hoodie. That was it. I reached for the shattered katana and felt the cold steel in my grip. I stood tall, pulling back my hood. "I thought you people were just ants," I muttered. "But you're a beetle." That was the highest compliment I'd ever give a piece of trash. The creature let out a deafening screech, its twisted face contorting in a mask of pure rage. It came at me one more time, swinging a heavy fist meant to crush my skull. Its jaw dropped when I didn't move. Fear finally started to bleed into its violet eyes. I stared right through it. At the end of the day, a bug is still a bug. I was done playing. I was too angry to let this thing die a peaceful death. With blood pumping in my ears, I drove the broken blade home. Pay me for the clothes. The beast finally broke. It threw its head back and screamed in absolute agonizing pain. I wasn't through with it yet. I wound up a final kick to finish the job. My heel slammed down like a thunderbolt, my vision burning with a primal, focused intensity. The aftermath was a gore-soaked nightmare. I stood victorious atop the troll's shattered skull. Standard procedure followed. I harvested the demonic essence into a sphere of crackling violet lightning. Suddenly, a digital flood of system alerts drowned my field of vision. Every ping confirmed that my dark power stats were surging to new heights. A final chime announced I had hit the threshold to master the Shadow Bolt. My stealth evolved instantly, and a basic blade mastery was added to my lethal arsenal. Riding that dopamine high, I summoned my status screen to check the new numbers. The interface glowed, detailing every fresh capability I had just wrenched from the void. I realized the Shadow Bolt was pure malice, an invisible, armor-piercing projectile of raw energy. Meanwhile, the sword skill promised to sharpen my natural edge with any cold steel. Both sat at grade 5. Finally, I had a way to kill from a distance. The sword skill confused me until I recalled that desperate, lucky strike with the shard. My gaze drifted back toward the massive, cooling carcass on the floor. Retrieving my weapon, I wondered if something else had wounded the beast before me. A strange glimmer deep within the monster's chest cavity demanded my attention. I reached into the hot viscera and yanked my hand back, trailing thick ribbons of red. I wiped the filth away to examine the prize I had scavenged. Within my bloodied palm lay a jagged, wicked shard of steel designed for deep penetration. It looked like a broken arrowhead or perhaps the tip of a shattered military blade. I questioned if the previous scout team had left this souvenir buried in the meat. The metal looked hauntingly familiar, but a pack of trolls suddenly emerged from the gloom. This was perfect timing. I was itching to field test my newfound destructive powers. I stood my ground, beckoning the towering beasts to come and get some. They snarled, clearly offended, though their eyes lacked the telltale glow of demonic possession. It made no difference to me as I gathered the darkness into my palms. It was finally time to witness the true lethality of a grade 5 offensive strike. Obsidian bolts spiraled from my fingertips, tracing unpredictable deadly arcs toward their terrified targets. 2 collapsed instantly into the dirt, while the third stood paralyzed by sheer, primal fear. Technically, my objective here was finished, and the dungeon was considered cleared. But I saw no reason to stop the fun, even if I became a nightmare. I decided to turn him and his pathetic friends into a heap of scrap. Hours passed after that massacre, and the school gate remained silent and totally unguarded. I finally stepped out of the rift, my secret work for the day concluded. On solid ground again, I checked my logs to confirm the zone was fully purged. With the heavy lifting done, I could finally enjoy the rest of my leave. For me, that meant 12 hours of total immersion in Dungeon Power Fighter. But the sun rose on the military base, returning us to the grueling daily grind. Sergeant Lee barked orders while the out-of-shape corporals wheezed behind me in the dust. I stood in the formation, completely unfazed by the physical toll of the morning. My mind drifted to yesterday's feast of ramen and the monsters I had deleted. It felt like a win, until I noticed the suffocating tension hanging over the platoon. Rumors of the tin can maneuvers had leaked, and everyone was dreading the upcoming hell. There was no escape. We were already fanning out across the fields with the commander. Every squad took a corner, beginning the slow, dangerous crawl toward the dungeon's heart. Commander Kim and his second-in-command were leading their exhausted squad uphill when something uncanny caught their eye. This massive drill forces the entire division to adapt to lethal, high-stakes surprises on the fly. Monsters suddenly crested the ridge, and the commander signaled his unit to dig in. Rifles were leveled instantly, but our guy June is just standing in the back, looking absolutely thrilled about the chaos. From the summit, obsidian spheres barrel toward the platoon. Closer look. They are fanged, bloodthirsty parasites. The brass, in their infinite wisdom, simply refer to them as the Dark Balls. Since standard lead works best, he yells to ditch the specialty gear for old-school firearms. Every squad locks into position in heartbeats, fingers itching on their triggers for the signal. Ningjun hunkers down, taking aim. One look at his face and you know he finds this the most fun yet. With the line set, the commander shouts to open fire and wipe every single one of them out. Lead starts flying as they dump their mags, popping those spheres left and right. Yet, those things were moving with such blurring speed that some rounds were bound to miss. The soldiers kept firing, though. Kim warns them that unlike his own, these dark balls have shells like reinforced armor plating. They hover, too, making blades useless. As they closed the distance, they pulsed, growing larger and more ominous. The commander realized the monsters were getting way too close for comfort. He barks a ceasefire and orders them to prep for a brawl. Only 3 of those freaks remain, but one bite means they will drain you dry. He warns everyone to keep their guard up. Mune figures getting bitten is basically a game over. If his squad gets slaughtered here, their ranking will absolutely hit rock bottom. While he is calculating the odds, one sphere lunges at the rookies, who are paralyzed by fear. Our boy is not about to let a few greenhorns ruin his perfect score. He dives into the fray. Racing toward the falling monster, he shouts for Sergeant Lee to be ready. Just as the ball drops, he launches it into the stratosphere with a world-class soccer kick. Lee and the rest just stand there, stunned. The sphere is a vertical rocket, showing 0 signs of slowing down. Even the top brass are just staring at the sky. Mune just looks smug. If he could use his dark arrows without blowing his cover, this would be a total cakewalk. The unit snaps out of it and shreds the airborne sphere, which detonates in a burst of gore. Not done yet. Our boy boots 2 more black spheres into the clouds, and the commander tells everyone to light them up while they are still airborne. Seconds later, the hill is painted in black slime. With the threat gone, the soldiers finally catch their breath. The commander grants a 10-minute breather and tells the squads to check for casualties. Any injuries need to be reported to him immediately. He then gives Mune a solid pat on the back for a job well done. Even Sergeant Lee and that former bully give him a thumbs up. Lee and Guangxik lock eyes, feeling a bit awkward about cheering for someone they used to look down on. They split up to avoid the tension. Meanwhile, 2 other sergeants collapse, looking like they have seen a ghost. Orangehead grumbles about the insane difficulty spike, especially after everything they have already fought. The tired-looking guy just shrugs, but mentions a rumor that this is not some low-level tin can dungeon. When Orangehead presses him, he explains what he heard from another squad. Apparently, there was a massive boss in here, but when the clear team arrived, they found a total bloodbath. A giant elephant monster was already dead, taken out by a face they all knew too well. That face belonged to the military's top brass, a legendary 2-star icon. Bloody Knuckles proved he dismantled that behemoth with his bare hands. He prowled toward the squad, sending a visible wave of terror through them. Beaming, he announced the boss was dead. Now the dungeon was our playground. Our specialist warned that killing the boss usually collapses the entire portal. They'd caged it alive just to turn this hell into a training camp. My sergeants broke right then, tears carving paths through the caked-on dirt. Kim Mi shoved them forward, barking that the break was officially over. Mune watched the chaos, looking strangely satisfied with the whole ordeal. He's sizing up the general, clearly itching for a real confrontation. We fell back into line, marching blindly toward our next destination. The captain froze at the ridge, signaling us to go dark immediately. Whatever he saw turned his face into a mask of pure dread. We crested the summit and stopped dead in total. Silent confusion. I saw him then, a lone figure sitting cross-legged in the dirt. He wore an injured tag, grinning like a predator awaiting its prey. Meanwhile, in the lush green wilds of a world called Isisgard, a mountain of an old man sat outside a stone ruin. He puffed his pipe, ears twitching at the sound of heavy boots. A massive Spartan loomed over him, hand resting on a notched blade. The old man scoffed, asking if he'd broken another damn sword. He knew the warrior was just cleaning up the church's filth. "Give it here," he grunted, and the soldier obeyed without word. The blacksmith studied the steel, wondering what could cause such carnage. He leaned in, asking if the boy had been hunting demons. Back at camp, the top brass were locked in a heated debate. Colonel Ko adjusted his glasses, sweat beading on his pale forehead. He feared this training exercise was about to become a bloodbath. Colonel Jian sat opposite him, looking far too calm for my liking. Jian argued the troops were soft and needed a taste of fire. Ko wasn't buying it. He looked like he was about to snap. He felt like they were leading lambs straight to the slaughter. Junium stormed in, rifle slung low, demanding to find the general. Jian just smirked while Ko struggled to find the right words. A roar erupted when Junium realized the general was already inside. The big man laughed, finding the whole disaster completely hilarious. He knew the general was a loose cannon nobody could actually stop. Junium turned pale, terrified of that monster being with his men. Then the guy in the glasses finally dropped the real bombshell. He pushed his frames up, letting the silence hang heavy and thick. The general was there to see one specific soldier in action. And there he was, the 2-star smiling devil, waiting for us. The commander of the 104th sat perfectly still in the dark. We just stood there, paralyzed, forgetting every bit of our training. I saw me cower behind the captain, both of them visibly trembling. I knew our objective involved a high-stakes casualty extraction during the operation. But our victim wasn't some HQ suit. It was Brutus from the Popeye unit. The guy looked like a caricature, though our CO wasn't much better. This mountain of a man loomed over us, making the sergeant look tiny. He grinned dangerously, telling us to mind his injured side during the drill. That single sentence sent a chill through the CO, leaving him totally speechless. He finally managed to salute and accepted this absolute joke of a task. 2 privates grabbed a stretcher while me nervously swore we'd carry the giant. Brutus just stood there, staring down the sergeant with pure, silent judgment. He clearly hated the sight of that flimsy little cot they brought out. As he approached, Brutus suddenly crushed the metal frame into a ball with one hand. I guess he wasn't planning on playing dead for anyone today. He dusted off his palms and walked away, looking completely fed up. Me, being the loyal soldier he is, still tried to reason with the general. He argued training protocol, but Brutus just told us to move out without him. While the sergeant was falling apart, the 2-star general locked eyes with me. From his eager look, it was obvious he'd come just to watch me work. We both felt his heavy gaze as he waited for something to happen. I couldn't help but smirk. The real fun was finally about to start. We had a lot of ground to cover, and the entertainment wasn't over yet. We moved into a blur of combat right after that strange meeting. The unit fought off waves of monsters while the general studied my every move. Every time the beasts lunged at us, I made sure my kill count was highest. Whenever a new threat emerged, I was always the first one to react. I even hauled the massive general through traps, making the training look like child's play. Eventually, though, the rest of the squad started hitting their breaking point. They were gasping for air while fighting these revolting, slime-covered lizard things. One private took a desperate swing at a monster with his last bit of strength. He sliced one, but another lizard lunged from the shadows behind him. The kid was spent. His eyes rolled back as he started to collapse. I moved instantly, taking the lizard's head off before its tongue could touch him. That lethal strike came directly from my own blade. I was pushing the limits of that new E-rank sword skill I'd unlocked. It's basic, but the power boost is exactly what I need to level up. I pulled the kid up while the others finished off the remaining scraps. He tried to thank me, but I was already scanning for the next move. Seeing them all struggle so hard, I decided they deserved a quick break. I dove into the next skirmish, finishing off every beast before anyone else could. I sprinted across the field, systematically dismantling every monster in our path. Within seconds, I reached the CO and gave the signal to halt. Brutus watched the entire performance from the best seat in the house. They said these drills were hell, but I was treating it like my own backyard. A lizard tried to creep up on the general, thinking it found a victim. Without even looking back, the old man sent it flying with one heavy punch. The CO finally called for a rest, exactly the outcome I'd been aiming for. I caught the commander's eye and gave him a solid thumbs up. That 2-star general didn't miss it. He's definitely watching my progress. I'd left my mark, but the nightmare was just beginning elsewhere. The all-female unit was holding their own line nearby. They fought those dark spheres, looking completely wiped out. Those void balls were putting the girls through hell. A beast lunged at a private who braced for impact. The blue-haired legacy hire stepped in, slicing it in two. Monster's dead. The girls finally caught their breath. A private praised Yunio's skill, blind to the threat behind. She was starstruck, missing the monster, closing the gap. When the screech hit, she was already too slow. A helmet flew as a comrade shoved her to safety. Yunio saved her, hair spilling out as gear tumbled. The private looked back, seeing the cost of her life. Yunio hung off a cliff, holding the beast back alone. The shove's momentum sent Yunio right over the edge. She was falling, and we were miles away, just relaxing. We were plotting moves when the general startled us. He beamed, calling our commander a truly gifted leader. The poor guy just looked terrified of the general. He mistook the praise for some kind of trap. Then the general saw us in back, just talking shop. It looked like I was teaching the rookies some stances. Our leader saw us and finally cracked a smile. He told the general his soldiers were naturally talented. The general insisted a leader's worth is his men. He flashed a grin, urging the boss to finish strong. He turned to Kimmy, who was avoiding him. He put me in a chokehold, critiquing his balance. I guess he just loves messing with his favorites. Two guys watched this comedy show from the back. Since one wore glasses, a lecture was coming. The rookie asked if the veteran had been here. The vet was tired but gave him an answer. The rookie pointed, and the veteran finally looked. A forbidden hole sat nearby, sparking the kid's curiosity. The corporal adjusted his frames, prepping an answer. He kept it blunt. It was just a hole. Then the commander yelled to move, and everyone rose. The rookie was still fixated on that mysterious pit. The vet asked if he'd slept through the briefing. The kid jumped. The veteran had nailed it. Pushing his glasses up, the vet began the explanation. He explains that these spatial anomalies remain a mystery, though theory suggests they're isolated pockets, bridging our world to another dimension. However, he clarifies that these gateways aren't a flawless bridge to some infinite expanse. The dungeon itself is an independent reality, and when a rift manifests, the connection often glitches. These terrain gaps are essentially packet losses occurring during a faulty spatial data transfer. Since this phenomenon is a standard occurrence across most sites, they've been dubbed dungeon holes, a term the corporal drops while adjusting his perfectly centered frames. The recruit with the fade looks stunned, but a fresh question immediately pops into his head. He's curious about the fate of anyone who slips past the borders or falls into that void. Specs admits he's short on facts, but word is that falling in just teleports you to a random coordinate elsewhere inside. Right as they wrapped up, a sudden roar of commotion erupted from the soldiers at the front of the line. The CO rushed forward to investigate the noise, and both he and our protagonist were floored by the sight. Jun froze upon recognizing the body on the ground. It was the high-profile beauty, Sun Yunio, from the female platoon, totally unconscious. A few moments later, we see her nursing a water bottle to rehydrate. She's resting on the dirt while the commander briefs her unit on the situation. The Major General observes the newcomer with a cold, unreadable curiosity, staying completely silent and still. That's when the CO informs her that he's already alerted the 4th Battalion, so she shouldn't stress about a rushed return. She's still visibly shaken, desperately asking if the rest of her squad made it out okay. Once more, the officer kindly assures her that everyone is safe and sound. Now that she's accounted for, they're getting back to their standard drills. The girl finally exhales, her tension vanishing as she thanks the commander for the update. Suddenly, she winces in pain. Looking down, she realizes someone has already expertly wrapped her foot in bandages. She must have wrecked her ankle right before taking that plunge into the spatial hole. Someone as driven as Yunio hates being sidelined. She's terrified of having to depend on anyone else. Regardless, she's out of commission, and Kim MG realizes there's no way she can push through the training like this. He gently suggests she focus on recovery, reminding her that staying healthy is a soldier's first priority before real combat. The CO backs him up, noting that an extraction team is en route from HQ, which effectively ends her session for the day. The girl tries to protest, fueled by a desperate urge to finish her training, but the reality of her injury sinks in. She goes quiet, hanging her head in total dejection. That's when Brutus finally makes his move, stepping in to demand an update on the private status. His sudden appearance leaves Yunio completely baffled, her face a mask of confusion as she wonders what a major general is doing in a place like this. The commander reports that she's mostly fine, aside from a fractured left ankle that's made it impossible for her to keep up with the drills. The 2-star general calls it a damn shame and asks her to recount exactly how she ended up here. Panicking, she babbles her name before explaining she went over a cliff fighting a monster and woke up in this spot. The division commander figures she hit a rift, remarking that it's a miracle she's even breathing after a fall like that. Then, something clicks in his brain, causing him to stiffen and recoil in surprise. He barks for her name again. She replies that she's Private First Class Sun Yunio. The general's reaction to her name is nothing short of explosive. He screams, asking if she's truly Santiho's daughter from the 4th Company of the 4th Battalion. She looks a bit sheepish about her family ties, but reluctantly confirms that the general is right. The second she nods, the man frantically slaps an injury tag on her and starts scanning the area like a madman. The rest of the platoon looks like walking ghosts, completely drained and useless at this point. But one soldier still looks like he's in peak condition, even taking the time to coach his buddies through drills. The Major General bellows for Kim Jun, snapping our hero's head around at the sound of his name. As he sprints over to the brass, the privileged private buries her face in her hands, dying of pure embarrassment. Her cheeks burned crimson as she struggled to meet my gaze. The memory of our last disastrous encounter clearly still haunted her. The air chilled when the commander ordered me to carry her, leaving me stunned. The general's fury was palpable. She demanded the girl stay until the end. I sized her up, mentally calculating the risks of this bizarre turn. She hid her face while the commander's rage reached a rolling boil. Regardless of the tension, I sensed a golden ticket to a massive promotion. I accepted the 2 stars order instantly, ready to shoulder the burden. I approached the division's princess, who looked like she'd seen a ghost. I offered a piggyback, though her expression screamed pure, unadulterated disgust. Quitting meant failing, a disaster she knew she simply couldn't afford. She understood the stakes, yet her hesitation was heavy in the air. Finally, she squeezed her eyes shut and reluctantly climbed onto my back. I was ecstatic. This was a career-making move, even if the squad judged me. They envied my stamina while thanking God it wasn't their backs breaking. I hoisted her up, the commander shadowing our every step like a hawk. He ordered me to follow Kim Mi and report any signs of fatigue. I wasn't tired. I was fueled by pure ambition and a fast heartbeat. To me, she wasn't a person, she was a winning lottery ticket to glory. She kept her head turned, refusing to look at her human transport. She was paralyzed by embarrassment, while I was busy planning my future. The general's eyes burned into us from behind with inexplicable resentment. Kim Mi warned him about the optics of favoring another general's daughter, but the general didn't care. He wasn't the type to retreat from gossip. Helping the wounded was legal, and training didn't stop for a twisted ankle. Yet, Kim Mi sensed a darker motive lurking behind the general's stoic words. The general's jaw tightened as he growled her father's name with pure venom. His bitter curses made the air feel colder. His hatred was absolutely terrifying. But let's get back to the girl on my back, caught in this storm. She watched the broken soldiers ahead, her anxiety spiking with every single step. Kim Mi was a fortress, but the general's presence felt like a blade. Being the only woman in this den of men was a total nightmare. She whispered for me to drop her if my strength began to fail. I laughed it off, saying she weighed less than a tank's armor. Considering the density of industrial steel, that was a pretty terrible compliment. I started guessing her exact weight until she snapped at me in horror. The rest of the guys were too close to death to care. Mortified, she promised to stay quiet if I'd just shut my mouth. The general watched us, his interest feeling more like a threat than curiosity. She finally realized I was her only hope for surviving this hellish ordeal. With a defeated sigh, she promised to settle the debt later on. My pulse quickened. A favor from her was a one-way ticket up. Her father's influence could change my entire life in an instant. Then I brought up her weight again, much to the squad's silent amusement. I was about to name a number when the atmosphere turned lethal. She starts wailing on him to shut his mouth, begging him to stop making a scene and save what's left of her pride. Kim, Mi, and Brutus just exchange stunned looks as the drama unfolds right in front of them. Man, the expressions those 3 flashed next were enough to send a major chill down Yunio's spine. You can tell these 2 old-timers think they're watching a romance in the making, and they're absolutely thrilled to have a front-row seat. Anyway, shadows soon swallowed the dungeon once more, leaving our squad more exhausted than they've ever been in their lives. They could barely keep their knees from buckling. The captain stayed at the point, navigating the gloom, while the lower ranks prayed they wouldn't stumble into any more nightmares. Sobbing like their hearts were breaking, they couldn't stop cursing the handsome jerk who dropped them into a training gauntlet set to maximum hell difficulty. That's when the lead tells them only 2 kilometers remain until they reach the finish line, demanding everyone lock in and keep their guard up until the very end before telling the corporals to pass the word back. The drained soldiers looked like they'd just heard a miracle. Finally, a light at the end of this total disaster. But that spark of hope vanished instantly when they spotted a new nightmare on the horizon. The second he saw it, the bald corporal screamed at the commander that aerial hostiles were diving from the ceiling. Once the captain locked eyes with the incoming threat, he barked orders for a defensive spread. We were about to go head-to-head with an enemy that owned the sky. The things diving at the squad were pure abominations. Imagine a serpent twisted into the wings of a starving bird. Jagged fangs and glowing orbs made it clear. These predators thrive in the pitch black. Turns out they're called black rakes, and the captain knew we couldn't have picked a worse time to run into these scavengers. The creatures began orbiting the panicked troops like vultures waiting for a heartbeat to stop. From the shadows, the general watches the whole mess. After seeing those monstrosities, even he has to admit the platoon's luck has completely run out. They dragged their wounded so close to the finish line, but this might be the end of the road. See, black rakes are small, but their serrated bits will peel a man's skin right off the bone. Sure, a seasoned hunter won't die from a few nicks, but these things are relentless, and trying to fight them while running on empty is a losing game. Throw in the midnight darkness, and even the general's aging eyes are struggling to track the shadows moving through the air. Meanwhile, the poor guys keep swinging at empty air, every heavy breath feeling like lead in their lungs as they miss again and again. MG sticks to the rear, acting as a human shield for the injured, but his disappointment is written all over his face. Even the general grumbles that this pathetic display of reflexes is a one-way ticket to a score deduction. The senior sergeant just has to stand there and take the heat. He sees his unit falling apart, struggling to even land a single blow on the winged pests. He knows he can't use exhaustion or the dark as an excuse for this failure. Hunters are paid to be ready for anything. Mie realizes that even if he abandoned his post to jump in, it wouldn't change the outcome of this slaughter. Watching the commanding officer whiff his strikes too, he worries that breaking formation now would just tank their final score even deeper into the red. In the end, Mie has no choice but to put his faith in the captain and wait for a signal. But looking at the sheer desperation on the captain's face, I'm betting he's completely out of ideas. Meanwhile, my boy is over here grinding his teeth so hard they might actually shatter from the rage. The general's threat of a points penalty is echoing in his head, and losing points is something our guy will never stand for. Cursing under his breath, he lunges forward, carrying the terrified girl on his back like a rucksack. As a lone tear rolls down Yunio's face, Myun skids to a stop behind the lead, demanding a chance to take a swing. The captain loses his mind at the thought of a guy weighted down by a casualty trying to charge into a dogfight. He tells him to back off, but Myun, seeing their scores plummeting, declares that everyone has officially hit their breaking point. With a dangerous fire in his eyes, he claims he's the only one left who can salvage this wreck. Seeing his insane confidence and the total collapse of the rest of the unit, the captain finally gives him a moment to talk. Myun leans in to whisper his strategy while the captain and Yunio strain to hear every word. But the moment the plan hits their ears, they both scream it's pure, unadulterated madness. Her hand slammed over her mouth as she realized she'd just screamed. But the commander's face was unreadable, like it was carved from granite. You could tell he was actually weighing the kid's suicidal gamble. Then, shocking everyone, the boss tapped the soldier's chest, giving him one shot. Fail and we bail. The girl's brain just couldn't process the stakes. She couldn't fathom trusting a rookie's last-second prayer in this hell. Overhead, winged nightmares shrieked, mocking the soldiers who were totally helpless. Desperate for an out, the CO reached for the casualty, ordering the kid forward. But the rookie cut him off, his eyes flashing with sudden defiance. No time. The commander ground his teeth and finally gave the nod. The kid bolted with the girl in tow as the CO cleared a lane. The general watched the chaos, his face a mask of pure confusion. He was stunned they were prepping to fire blind into a pitch-black abyss. It was go time. He slammed a mag home, telling the girl to grip tight. With that hungry look in his eyes, he wasn't losing anyone tonight. She had zero options left. She had to put her life in his hands. Squinting her eyes shut, she latched onto the madman and braced for impact. Suddenly, his pupils ignited with a hellish, supernatural fire. He cut through the dark easily, whispering that the night was his home. To him, this slaughterhouse felt like level 1 of some twisted arcade game. He lined up the crosshairs, shadows coiling around his finger like a curse. It was clear he'd finally unleashed that dark arrow skill. He squeezed. A supersonic streak of pure shadow tore through the sky. The beast tried to dance away, sensing the incoming doom. But the sheer pressure of the shot ripped it in two anyway. She barely saw the hit, only the monster's sudden and total erasure. It made her head spin. She couldn't fathom how he'd done it. He knew the trick those rounds hit like trucks, making dodging impossible. Since he alone could see the target, the world stayed blind. He went full action hero in the dark while she clung on for life.